Uh, let's start today's dissemination workshop on carbon market readiness in Pakistan. So, we begin today's program with the recitation from the Holy Quran. I would like to request our tech team to please play it.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
By the declining day, man is in deep loss, except for those who believe, do good deeds, urge one another to the truth, and urge one another to steadfastness.
صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair. As we begin today's event, it's a very important conversation on climate action, governance, integrity. It is fitting that we first hear from TI Pakistan's leadership. I now invite Professor Dr. Uzma Shujaat, Member Board of Trustees, Transparency International Pakistan, for the welcoming remarks. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all on behalf of the Transparency International at this dissemination event on carbon markets readiness in Pakistan, addressing governance gap and strength safeguarding against integrity risk. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, especially Ms. Romina Khurshid Alam, Coordinator to Prime Minister Climate Change and Environmental Coordination, Mr. Ali Toki Sheikh, expert on climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Transparency International, I would like to extend my gratitude to all of you for joining us today at this report dissemination event on the carbon markets in Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 2 decades, Pakistan has seen important milestones from early clean development mechanism projects to pioneering nature-based initiatives such as the Delta Blue Carbon Project, and more recently, the growing momentum towards Article 6 implementation. These efforts reflect our growing awareness of the climate crisis, as well as the pressing national need for innovative financial mechanisms that can support mitigation, enhance adaptation, and build resilience for our communities and ecosystem. Carbon markets, if developed with integrity and a strong governance, offer a meaningful pathways to achieve these objectives. Ladies and gentlemen, everything markets and developing economies face a vast climate finance gap. Trillions of dollars are needed annually to meet national determined coordination NDCs. But public finance alone is not enough. For countries striving to reduce emission, build resilience, and create jobs, this fairness finance gap can feel like an unsurmountable barrier. High integrity carbon market offer a powerful solutions when designed with environmental and social integrity at their core. They can mobilize private capital, complement concessional finances, and channel resources directly to the countries and economies that need them most. So, ladies and gentlemen, today, however, as the report clearly emphasized, ambition alone is not enough. The credibility and effectiveness of Pakistan's carbon market will depend on the strength of the governance systems that support it. The absence of a unified national emissions baseline fragmented data system and gaps in technical capacity across institutions are issues that, if left unaddressed, could compromise the environmental integrity of carbon market initiatives. Accurate, transparent, and publicly accessible data is essential, not only to ensure the quality of carbon credits, but also to prevent risks such as double counting, which can erode trust and undermine the entire system. Equally important is the social dimension of carbon markets. The report highlights the critical need for equitable benefit sharing. Projects such as mangrove restoration in the Indus Delta, improved water management system, and rural energy efficiency initiatives has profound social implications. The benefits must reach the communities most closely connected to these landscapes. Transparent, legally enforceable mechanisms are necessary to safeguard community rights and ensure that local people are active partners rather than passive participants. International experience demonstrate that carbon markets are most sustainable when local stakeholders are fully engaged and their right protected. The national carbon market guidelines are an important step forward, and the expanding portfolio of pilot projects supported by international partners such as UNEP, SPAR 6C, the World Bank, and others demonstrates a growing appetite for these markets in Pakistan. Even more encouraging is the willingness of the government departments, technical experts, and civil society representatives to engage in constructive dialogue and joint problem solving. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that the insight from the reports will provide a roadmap for carbon market that is grounded in integrity and inclusivity. I wish you a productive day ahead. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for setting the tone for today's session. To understand the purpose of today's gathering and why this report matter at this moment for Pakistan, we now turn to leadership behind this initiative. I now invite Mr. Kashif Ali, Executive Director, Transparency International Pakistan, to share the key highlights of the report.
Thank you, Raima. Honorable Rovina Khushi Saiba, Ali Tokir Saab, Special Secretary KP, Sindh, Balochistan. Dear ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, we have worked a lot, I think, with some of you sitting in this room when this report was being made. But thank you very much for taking out the time to join us today. And on behalf of Transparency International Pakistan, like earlier, our board member also did, I also extend my sincere appreciation for your time and also for your presence at the launch of the report, Carbon Market Readiness, Addressing Governance Gaps and Safeguarding Against Integrity Risks. Please also forgive me for my voice, I'm a little under the weather. But just to give you a background, this particular report that we are launching today, we are doing so under the Transparency International's global program on climate governance integrity. Now, this particular program is being implemented in more than 25 countries across the world with the generous support of Beverly Street Foundation. And I think what this program is doing is not that the TI is against the carbon markets. It's just that what it is doing is highlighting in the countries which are developing these frameworks and are at the sort of infancy stage to highlight that these carbon markets are essentially a good way of climate finance strategy. But at the same time, it is important for the national governments to be cognizant of the fact that there are integrity risks. And I think in the context of Pakistan, as has been said earlier, so we all know that Pakistan remains among the countries which is most severely affected by climate change. And the series of events and the overlapping, I think, floods that we have witnessed in 2025 were yet another reminder of the intensifying climate effects on this country. But at the same time also, I think it was a reminder of our own vulnerabilities when it comes to our national and local resilience ecosystems. And what we have done in this report is also look at these vulnerabilities in the context of growing and urgent need to access climate finance. Now, as a developing country and with ambitious climate goals, but at the same time limited fiscal capacity and significant investment gaps, our ability to deliver on these climate commitments, it really depends on how much we have the capacity to mobilize and access the climate finance from both domestic and international sources. And I think it is in this context that the carbon markets are now increasingly seen globally as a strategic tool for climate finance mobilization. The Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, it offers a mechanism for countries to voluntarily engage and to transform these mitigation outcomes into a large scale climate finance projects from both public and private sources. And in doing so, what the Article 6 does, it offers a sort of a legal and procedural mechanism in terms of how countries can cooperate voluntarily to meet their NDC's targets through the exchange of mitigation outcomes. Now, if we can zoom a bit out of Pakistan for a bit and take a context of the carbon markets globally, we have seen that how over the last few years, the carbon markets as a climate finance tool has grown exponentially and rapidly. In 2023, the compliance markets were valued at $948 billion. In 2021, the voluntary markets were estimated in transactions at $2 billion, and this is estimated to grow between $50 to $100 billion by 2030. However, this expansion globally has also some serious concerns. And these concerns range from credit quality, from double counting, from additionality, and also from the social and environmental safeguards. And Transparency International has consistently, through its reports, has highlighted that the allegations of corruption within carbon markets, in part, they also come out because the carbon markets drastically differ from any other commodity market. Because if you look at the conventional commodity market, the buyer or purchaser would always has an incentive to ensure a good quality product. But in the carbon market, such an incentive or a motivation really remains absent as long as the credit is realized. So what we are looking at is that there is a need for a strong governance frameworks to regulate this incentivization. And against this backdrop at TI Pakistan, we have been engaging a lot with Ministry of Climate Change under the leadership of Ms. Romina Khurshid, as well to highlight some of these risks and ensure that the integrity and inclusion should remain at the center of our climate market, carbon market guidelines. The report launched today is the first comprehensive assessment of Pakistan's readiness on carbon markets. It examines governance, institutional, and integrity risks, as well as proposes recommendations which are based on global best practices, especially countries with similar socio-economic contexts as Pakistan, in terms of how they are doing to integrate integrity measures in their carbon markets guidelines. Now, for the context, in December 2024, Pakistan issued the first ever national guidelines on carbon markets. These guidelines serve as a strategic, multiple strategic purposes. First, they introduce a formal authorization process for carbon markets, ensuring that the projects intending to transfer mitigation outcomes abroad are consistent with Pakistan's nationally determined contributions. Now, this also includes provisions for corresponding adjustments, a requirement under Article 6 to avoid double counting between the host and the acquiring countries. Now, second, if you look at the guidelines also outline the roles and responsibilities of different institutions, in particular the Ministry of Climate Change, which is a designated focal point on carbon markets in Pakistan. However, what we have, I think, highlighted from this assessment that these guidelines essentially remain very high level and also very preliminary in nature. The much of the operational details, whether it's the design of the national registry, the mechanism of benefit sharing, the avoiding of the double counting, the baseline setting, the fee structures, all these details have to be supplemented through subsidiary regulations, which will come place once the rules for the carbon markets are finalized in Pakistan. And thirdly, I think while the guidelines demonstrate a very strong political will, but at the same time, I think there is also what the report highlights, there is a critical disjuncture between a political will and ambition, but at the same time, a functioning architecture on the ground in provinces at the federal level in terms of how to implement these markets and how to operationalize this. Now, let me briefly highlight three key recommendations, and our researcher, Mr. Hamza Bhatt, who couldn't be here in person due to a medical emergency, will present the report findings in more detail. Now, the first and foremost, the report highlights the lack of clear and consolidated national emission baselines. In other words, the unavailability of data is a significant barrier in Pakistan at the moment. There is a lack of clarity in terms of which institution has which data sets on carbon emissions. Now, without a verifiable and single emission baseline, it is difficult for any market based climate action to take place in an effective manner or to determine its starting point. Now, again, I think when we look at these gaps, the implications are also far reaching because we are looking at these implications in the context whether our baseline data is verifiable, it's reliable, whether it can determine accurate baselines, whether it can determine or address the additionality or avoiding double counting aspects that we were highlighting. And all these pose integrity risks in terms of how these markets operate. Secondly, the carbon markets must also reflect the interests and rights of the communities who are most affected by climate change at the ground. While equitable benefit sharing mechanism is acknowledged in Pakistan's national guidelines, to operationalize it remains unclear. There are no defined criteria for identifying beneficiaries, no community engagement, no capacity building frameworks, and no structured process in terms of how to ensure that the local actors can meaningfully participate or claim their fair share out of these projects. Now, this risk excluding the very communities whose lands, forests, or their projects, resources underpin these carbon market projects. And thirdly, I think what we have highlighted this report is from the governance point of view that while in the guidelines, the Ministry of Climate Change is a national designated focal point, but there are concerns among the stakeholders who have participated in this study that the governance structure remains very ambiguous in terms of what are the roles and responsibilities between the federal and provincial, especially in the context of the debates, where now increasingly the projects which are coming up for these markets are inherently remain under the jurisdiction of the provinces. So there are jurisdictional potential conflicts that could arrive without a clarity in terms of whose roles and responsibility starts or ends where. Finally, what we have also done in this study is to propose learning from global best practices, which are vital for Pakistan as it develops its carbon markets, and look forward to developing rigorous governance mechanisms around them. In nutshell, some of the recommendations, but again, we'll be having a more technical presentation on this. What we are emphasizing is the need to align our national guidelines on carbon markets with emerging integrity standards and community safeguards. There's a need to institutionalize transparency and disclosure of information, mandate safeguards and equity provisions for beneficiaries that is consistently applied across all the projects. There is a need to institutionalize free, prior informed consent, ensuring that the communities can meaningfully participate in decisions about the land use, project design, and benefit sharing before any activities begin. And there is a need to implement grievance redressal mechanism within these guidelines, which in line with the benefit sharing mechanisms if there are any disputes in terms of how these will be resolved. Now, towards the end, I once again thank you all for your presence here, and we hope that the dissemination event today will help forge this collaborative discussion and more of a candid discussion in terms of how the governance around the carbon markets can be strengthened so that these become a key part of our climate finance strategy in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for clearly outlining the foundation of this important work. Carbon markets cannot move forward without strong national leadership and policy direction. We are fortunate today to hear directly from the Prime Minister's office on this crucial subject. Her perspective will help us understand how governance, climate ambition, and implementation connect at the highest level. I now invite Ms. Romina Khurshid Alam, Coordinator to the Prime Minister for Climate Change, for her keynote remarks. Please give her a very warm welcome and a big round of applause.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, dear, for this invite. First of uh, all the distinguished guests, but of course, my very respectable Dr. Taqi Saab, who's a great man, great expert. Uh, then Mr. Kashif Ali, Mr. Hamza, who's not around, but again, he's a great inspiration. And of course, when we talk about Ali Taqi Saab, sorry, I've said in the doctor, but yes, you're a doctor of a climate as well, and as being expert. So for me, all those who are here, all the respectable people who are here, and of course, the people from the learned people, Assalamu alaikum and great regards. And it's so good to see so many familiar faces over here. Coming and like, first of all, I really wanted to apologize because everybody, most of the people who know me, they know that I don't come late, usually not fashionably late, but I was like, as Mr. Kashif, you were under the weather and I was under the meetings. So I just have to wind up and I really apologize for that. So getting back to the subject, first of all, as being talking about this special event, I really wanted to thanks to the Transparency International Pakistan for inviting me to join you this morning. And it's, of course, a pleasure, to hear, not only hear from you, of course, to learn from this report more, because I always believe learning has no end. And standing as a policymaker doesn't mean that I'm an expert. And I always say that I'm not an expert. My job, and this is I'm saying just for me, I'm not saying for others because there are people who are very much expert, but I just wanted to say that I always believe that I'm not an expert on this, on different subjects, because my job is to get the expertise from you people who are the learned people and who have their expertise, and to bring those expertise into the policy, into the toolkits. And I really want to congratulate Transparency International and, of course, Madam, the whole team of yours. I think they have done a tremendous job, because what I was going through with the names, the most important thing which I really like about it, that most of the experts are the national experts. The people who know me, they know me that I always talk about that we need to engage our people, our local national people, because they are the ones who have the pulse of the issues. They are the ones, they are fully loaded with the knowledge. They know the issues, and bringing someone who don't have the like, they must be having a great expertise or on command on the things, but local is local, national is national, and that is something which I always believe strongly in that. And I really want to congratulate the names which are going on. And before that, while I was quickly going through it, so the I really like the not only the front page, of course, what is written on it, that is also an amazing. And then the case studies, when we're talking about Ghana, because I'm sure most of the people are from the national level over here. When we're talking about the most of the people, like the reports which have been shared over here, the report is from Ghana, the case studies from Ghana, case studies from South Africa, and domestic carbon markets, and California and Brazil, of course. I always believe in the regional solutions, because we have to somehow, we can't say that whatever is happening in Brazil or whatever is happening in USA, that is going same things we can do it over here. Of course not, because you cannot mix apples with oranges. It's just a humble feeling. Bade darte darte jo hai, I'm just saying, because lots of experts are over here. And of course, Ali Taqir Saab is also a great man who's sitting over here. And then, of course, this is something really touched my heart, that stop corruption from destroying the planet. Because I strongly believe wherever I'm going, whatever I'm talking, I'm just trying to emphasize on one thing, that please, we need to understand that, it is okay that, yes, we are the national citizens of whoever country we are living. So We are Pakistani. We are from the vulnerable. The impacts are like we are on the like highest impact of the vulnerabilities, but we all are the one citizens of the planet citizens. Because if the planet is going to be remain, of course things are going to go. So I think this is something which I'm saying, and I think you give me another line that stop corruption from destroying the planet. So getting back to the words which I really want to say in my humble capacity as well, that as you may know that during my previous term we were able to secure cabinet approval. I tried my level best for the national policy guidelines for trading in carbon markets, which is, I think, the most important thing to have been here. And then the discussion moreover that what's going to be happen, what we have, what we should not have. So this is something, but at least something is there. So when something is there, then of course we can move forward. And it was the first ever time Pakistan put forward a clear national directions on this issue. That step came after months' discussion with ministries, provisional departments, and technical experts, and it reflected a simple belief: Pakistan must be prepared for the opportunities and responsibilities that come with the carbon markets. We did not see carbon markets as a shortcut or a silver bullet, but as one of the several tools when we talk that could help us attract new climate finance, support green investment, and encourage better practice across sectors. Because we all know that when we talk about the vulnerability of our countries, now it's no more time to say that, to cry or yell that, oh, we are the vulnerable. The developed countries are no more interested in that. So we have to think about it. We have to stand on our own grounds. We have to talk about ourselves. We have to talk about our right. And in that way, we need to put the pressure on the developed countries that we want trade, not aid. And that was the slogan last COP of 29, which I led, in that I tried to make sure that everybody should know that. And I'm glad that, alhamdulillah, people knew that we made that noise very clear, that we are not interested in any sort of, just pledges. We want trade, we want our right. In that way, of course, that is something we are looking forward. At the same time, we knew the risks are unclear rules, weak oversight, or limited transparency, because could easily undermine the whole effort. This is why the governance has always been at the heart of the conversation. I appreciate highly that this initiative does not shy away from difficult questions. It highlights where we stand, where the gaps are, and I'm glad that you have mentioned, and what needs attention. It reminds us that building a credible carbon market is not just about a myth or ideologies or technical systems. It is about trust, to build the trust. Trust in data, trust in institutions, and trust that the benefits will reach the people and communities who deserve them. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan is still at the early stages of developing its carbon market framework. And this is the time to make sure that we get things right: clear institutional roles, reliable monitoring systems, transparent approval approaches, process, and proper safeguards for communities, and all essential if we want Pakistan's carbon credit to be respected and valued internationally. Without these elements, and then the more important is the coordination among the provinces as well, which is the most important element. Without these elements, we risk creating efforts, confusions instead of opportunities. What I find encouraging today is the diversity of voices in this room: government, civil society, development partners, and the private sector. Carbon markets cannot be shaped by one institution alone. They require cooperation, open discussion, and a willingness to learn from global experiences while adapting them to Pakistan's realities. Transparency International, Pakistan's work contributes to exactly that. It gives us evidence, raises important concerns and offers practical suggestions. I believe report like this help a lot to steer us towards better decisions and remind us that transparency and accountability must guide our climate actions. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue, the government of Pakistan remains committed to strengthening climate governance and ensuring that any carbon market activity supports our national goals and benefits our people. We welcome partnerships, research, and conservative dialogues, and constructive dialogues that help us move forward in the right direction. Ladies and gentlemen, I really once again special thanks to Transparency International because I strongly believe, and I really liked today in this hall that it is not a quantity. The faces sitting over here, they all are the quality. And learn, as I said, that learning has no end. I would really like to learn more further as well. And of course, as we always learn from each other, and I always love to learn. So I believe that this discussion from this day as well. And I really wanted to mention Hamza, who is a great support through ever, nationally, internationally. These sort of a champions who, and I believe they are the true ambassadors. Those are no matter where they are sitting, but they are the voice of Pakistan. So I think we all need to encourage him as well. And thanks to everyone from my side, as being a citizen of Pakistan, not as being a coordinator to Pakistan, Mr. Prime Minister, but moreover, as being a citizen of a Pakistan, citizen of the planet, I really wanted to thank each one of the person who has put efforts in this report, that whatever you have done, that means a lot, matters a lot. And of course, the future based on so many things on that. So I really want to thank you once again to the Transparency International Pakistan organizing this workshop and to inviting me to make a part of that. And of course, as I always say, and today again, I'm going to say that again, it's not I, it's not you, it's us. And when we become together, we can build a better and greater future for everyone in the planet. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your valuable insights. We have heard the policy perspective. Now it is time to explore the technical depth of the report that brought us all together today. This presentation will walk us through the evidence, readiness gaps, and the integrity risks shaping Pakistan's carbon market landscape. So we have our lead researcher online, Mr. Hamza Rafe Bhatt, climate and nature finance expert at UNEP, to present the detailed finding of the reports.
Alaikum. Can someone confirm if they can see me or hear me? Because मुझे सिर्फ podium नजर आ रहा है.
We are see you.
Good. So, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and a very warm welcome to this dissemination event. Most of my planned conversation around the report has been covered by Kashif already, but I'll try to pick up on the highlights of the report. But before I do that, I'm very thankful to Transparency International for this opportunity and for the support and the encouragement, and would like to express my gratitude to Kashif and his team, most importantly for encouraging me to be transparent with the report. Is my screen visible? Anyone? Can you confirm?
Yes, carry on.
Right. So, Pakistan, at this point, the carbon markets discourse in Pakistan is standing at a very critical juncture, I believe. Carbon markets, which, as Madam Ramina said, who I'm Madam Ravina has mentioned that it is um, not developed. It's still developing, but I think that we with the guidelines we've touched that mark where we've laid a strong foundation to hit that mark. But when I say that Pakistan stands at a critical juncture, it's not just focused because not just because of the carbon markets, but because of uh, other issues as well. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you some images which are very self-explanatory. These images basically depict the extent of crisis in Pakistan, the extent of the triple planetary crisis, which is a joint crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And this goes on to show that Pakistan does need a lot of uh, does need tools like carbon markets. अब ये कुछ जो pictures मैंने आपके साथ share किए हैं ये I think everyone in the room and just seeing a lot of familiar faces. I think everyone in the room is well equipped to to tell us that how to fix this, how to fix the triple planetary crisis. But how is that that point? We may have the science, we may have the evidence. We do have the science and the evidence. We may have the policy to do that. But one critical juncture, one critical point which is potentially missing is and which is very urgently needed is finance. Finance is possibly the answer of how to do it. Uh, at this point, Pakistan faces around 380 billion. Pakistan needs around 380 billion to address its environmental financial needs to carry out mitigation, adaptation, and cover up the loss and damage. I believe Mr. Ali Tawqir Sheikh is in a better position to comment on these figures. But the 380 billion can be generated through carbon markets. Of course, not all of it, but carbon markets can potentially be used as a tool to generate it, particularly because in Pakistan, it's not just the triple planetary crisis, but it's also the economic crisis where Pakistan was just checking this morning and appalled to see that Pakistan ranks 161st in terms of in terms of GDP per capita, where the GDP per capita is just slightly above $1,700. So we believe that carbon markets is that one tool where the climate finance and this figure of 380 billion can be achieved, which kind of sums up the rationale for this report that we developed. I'm going to now briefly cover what the report covers. The report for the development of this report, we took a three-tiered approach, segregating and separating the findings of this report into under three different sections. The first section being under the findings, the first section focusing on what the present gaps are, not just the governance gaps, but also the gaps in the carbon markets framework that Pakistan has. The second was focused on developing those opportunities for Pakistan and bringing in these international best or good practices, particularly from Ghana, South Africa, Brazil, and California. And seeing where can Pakistan learn from these opportunities, learn from these case studies, and contextualize them to Pakistan's context and potentially learning a lesson from them. And the third, of course, was policy recommendations. The policy recommendations, we thought that being in the sector for more than a decade now, and I guess all of my colleagues in the room would agree that we wanted this report not to end up on the shelf or in the drawer and then eventually the waste paper basket. We wanted this report to have some impact, provide some actionable items, to provide some smart actions which could be taken up by the Ministry of Climate Change, by other stakeholders involved in this endeavor. So we tried to make the policy recommendations as actionable as possible. Some some key findings of this report, which possibly stand outside of these three segregated these three segregations. The number one is that Pakistan has the potential, even if we are mobilizing or operationalizing 10 to 15% of our total potential, Pakistan can generate uh, 400 million to $2 billion annually through carbon markets, and this is just 10 to 15% of the potential in if you're able to tap that. The second key finding was that we have living labs in the Gympie wind farm and the Delta Blue Carbon project. The Delta Blue Carbon project is a very important one. It embodies everything that a successful carbon project should. It is taking into account community empowerment, community participation. It is including transparency mechanisms, and most importantly, it is working on mangrove credits. Mangrove credits, as most of you would know, uh, are sold at a higher premium because of the higher effectiveness of the mangroves, not just as carbon sinks, but also that because the mangroves tend to provide a wide range of ecosystem services, like disaster risk reduction, like creating an environment for aquaculture. I'm not sure if colleagues from the WWF are here, but when I was working for WWF once upon a time, there was project development going on for shrimp farming in the mangroves down south. So I guess Delta Blue Carbon and Gympie are two living examples, two living labs where Pakistan and the authorities responsible for the operationalization of carbon markets can learn a lot from. Uh, then one other key finding, which will also be covered in the later stages of my presentation, is about the market level trust and confidence that needs to be built. As Kashif said, that its carbon markets are different from commodity markets, but I feel that they do share a lot of similarities, and that one foundation of market forces to act and come into operation is this trust and confidence. Even in a commodity market, when suppose you go and get fruit, there's a relationship of trust and confidence that you will get a good price. The seller will get a good price, and the buyer will get a good quality product. So putting that framework where the seller in the carbon markets will get a good price and the buyer uh, will actually be able to offset their emissions. That particular philosophy needs to be embedded within the carbon market framework. And lastly, within the at the end of the report, we come up with a checklist, a carbon market development checklist, which can be an important tool for the Ministry of Climate Change to mobilize carbon markets. Quickly talking about the key governance gaps. Again, the gaps are I will not be discussing them independently, but some important gaps are worth discussion over here. We felt in the report, and we very strongly highlighted that a national emissions baseline needs to be available, needs to be developed or conducted, or we need to get data from different sources and feed into that national emissions baseline. There needs to be uh, you know there's existing data infrastructure. There's a lot of data which is probably held by a private sector organization, or there's a data held by a district administration. I think a key governance that's potentially a gap, and that all of that needs to be brought together. We'll be talking about that later. Another key gap that we uh, realized was about clarity of roles and clarity of priorities. This is again, uh, these need to be cleared at the early stages of uh, developing the carbon markets, because then that is how the flow of the carbon markets would be, and that's we need those, the clarity for priorities and roles need to be there. When I talk about priorities, while interviewing some key experts for the development of this report, uh, and while having a very candid discussion with even Mr. Ali Tokir Sheikh, uh, we had in depth talked about how it's kind of a war between money versus emissions, which kind of highlights the clarity of priorities point. Um the the you know the one key factor between the success and failure of a carbon market is that priority. Do we see it as a money making mechanism, or do we see it as a tool to balance out the emissions or control the emissions? Now, theoretically, it is, of course, a tool to offset and to balance out the emissions and control the emissions. But in the areas, and we've seen cases, we've seen regions where carbon markets have failed. And one key reason behind that was that the emissions factor was foregone, and it was just seen as a finance generation mechanism, which should not ideally be the case. And from the point of clarity of roles, I will jump to the next slide, to the case study of Brazil. Now, I was working with this researcher, this professor who part-time teaches at the University of Cambridge and has written, books on. She serves on the task force for the Brazilian carbon markets and has written several books on how the Brazilian carbon markets were brought into operation. Uh, 17 line ministries, 17 federal ministries in Brazil are part of that overall working group, which is operationalizing the carbon market system. And this particular plan has been going on for the past 12 years. We've seen different governments in Brazil. We've seen different administrations come by. There's been people who, not on the team anymore, they're retired. Um, but there has been a continuity. And I guess that this is one lesson to learn for Pakistan, that continuity in political alignment is crucial. So is long-term planning. And it took them 12 years to come up with a finally operational carbon market. So the lesson here that I would that would worth learning would be to not rush into it and make sure that the MOCC as the sole organization is not the only organization working on it. Rather, we have more than one organizations working on it, and it's a cross governmental effort. And for Pakistan, with the 18th Amendment, with the devolution in place, it would just not need to be a federal effort. We'd have to engage with the provinces as well. Some good opportunities for Pakistan to learn from Ghana, which looks at resolving, which looks at making sure that there's equity within the benefit sharing. There's developing an independent monitoring, reporting, and evaluation system and verification system. Improved integrity. Some learnings from California about strong enforcement, and from South Africa about again resolving all the data challenges and having a registry. So some key learnings there for Pakistan, some key opportunities that we feel that could be good lessons to learn. Now, what we did with these opportunities was that, of course, these are opportunities and these need to be somehow translated into actions for Pakistan, because Pakistan has a different context. We're in a different stage of our carbon market journey. So these are contextualized uh, for particularly for Pakistan, and these were then translated into policy recommendations, which have some smart actions. The first policy recommendation discusses about the having a robust data infrastructure and dynamic baselines. Uh, I guess without a carbon registry, without a functional and operational baseline, it is it, having a carbon market is not possible, because then we will not be able to track the impact. And then again, that if we continue without having a baseline and without having robust data, then again that trust factor that I discussed earlier of not getting the right product will be prevalent, of course. Uh, but this goes beyond just having a registry. There needs to be data sharing between provinces, public-private data sharing. There needs to be data sharing between districts, and there needs to be data integration. I'm pretty sure that the Ministry of Climate Change has been giving this a thought. I know, and after meeting up, speaking to some colleagues at the ministry, I know that this has come under discussions, but I guess this should potentially be the step one of making sure that the carbon market structure is already there and having a functional carbon market. The second policy recommendation deals with strengthening legal and regulatory foundations. I guess that in order to actually have it, to give it a structure and to give it a shape, and this is a plea to Madam Ramina as well, that we need to have a carbon market law. We need to have legislative backing for carbon markets, because it won't just give it a structure, but I guess that legislative backing is also important for making sure that there are safeguards, for making sure that there's equitable benefit sharing, and because these are local communities at stake, and these local communities require protection, and those protection measures can only come from a legal instrument, and if there is legislative backing uh, for a particular mechanism like the carbon markets. There would within this policy recommendation, we've also talked about how you know roles and jurisdictions would need to be decided, particularly the federal and provincial interface. And I would say that even I know that we don't have a very strong local government structure prevalent in the country at this point, but even going to the local level and not just getting the data, but also dividing responsibilities and making sure that there's an entire chain of command and an entire hierarchy in place. Also, some discussion about leveraging existing institutional mechanisms, and not just around this is not just around data systems or data, but also using institutional knowledge, using institutional tools. Um, I believe the uh, the MRV system for the Red Plus program was developed by the Pakistan Forest Institute. And if we have our colleagues from WWF in the room, they were a part of the development of this MRV system, and that MRV system would potentially be used as a model. And then again, my earlier point about living labs of Gympie wind farms and the Delta Blue Carbon project. Uh, we have so much institutional knowledge. We have so much. We have existing institutional mechanisms, and I think all that needs to be done is bringing everything together. How to bring everything together? This was again uh, uh, discussed with some colleagues at the ministry, but felt that we feel that having a national carbon credit council or a committee would help, it should operate independently from the MOCC, but should have membership from different ministries, and taking inspiration from the Brazilian working group. I believe having a dedicated body working on carbon markets and carbon credits would be very helpful. And then again, we interviewed some friends from the private sector working in Sindh and Punjab, and we think that private sector has a massive role to play. Private sector is very keen on taking up carbon markets and carbon credits, but they need to be brought into the picture. They need to be well integrated within the system. They need to be consulted because they are holding and they are owning some very valuable data. The point about technical training, technical training should be carried out within the planning phase. We want carbon market professionals. We want environmental professionals, accounting professionals working on this. And of course, you wouldn't want an engineer doing a hard bypass on you. So carbon markets are potential as important, and we feel that a technical training program, or enabling employment and enabling specialization would help a lot in this regard. Then there's a point about, we recommend a point about safeguards, equity, and public participation. Some of the points have already been covered in detail by Kashif, where Kashif spoke about the FPIC having a strong GRM, a grievance redressal mechanism. But the key takeaway from safeguards and the key takeaway from this is that the benefit sharing needs to be adaptive. It needs to be contextual to the local community that the carbon project is based in, and it needs to also take into account gender and vulnerability lens within the revenue allocation. The needs of one community might be different from the needs of the other community, and you cannot have one glove that would fit all. Which is why we suggest that this needs to be adaptive and this needs to change from community to community. Again, using institutional knowledge is a great. We have a great example of the trophy hunting program, the trophy hunting model, where the safeguards and benefit sharing are exemplary. That is the trophy hunting program that is implemented in the north. And I believe colleagues from the Archon Foundation, colleagues from the WWF, who were interviewed for this particularly, had a strong interest in helping develop this forward and helping with the implementation of this. Then we feel that there needs to be strong international linkages, which is where within that working group, within that council, the foreign ministry or the commerce ministry could come in, and carbon markets, carbon credits could be an international commodity that we're promoting through diplomatic and technical coalitions, building buyer confidence, pitching the quality of our carbon certificates to foreign stakeholders, and this would not just you know promote the Pakistani carbon credits in the international market, but also give us the opportunity to make potentially uh, you know 6 billion or 10 billion out of that 2 billion per annum that we're making, that we not making but hope and aspire to make. A carbon credit in the international market is of course sold for a higher price, and the difference is significant. A $5 credit which may be sold for $5 in Pakistan can be has the potential to be sold at $50 in the international market. So, leveraging on the Article 6 as a strategic entry point, we feel that uh, access to the international market can be enhanced, and carbon credits could be potentially used as the key product that we're pitching to international stakeholders. And finally, adopting a realistic strategy, learning from Brazil, learning from other stakeholders around the world, adopting a phased and a realistic strategy. If we think that for any particular ambition or for anything, हम 6 महीने में कार्बन मार्केट का पूरा फ्रेमवर्क खड़ा कर देंगे तो वो जो है वो जितनी जल्दी खड़ा करेंगे उतनी जल्दी गिरेगा. So this needs a phased approach. This needs a realistic approach, and this needs some thought process. And I feel the progress that we've seen in the past 1 year is sort of aligning with this strategy. And thankful to the Ministry of Climate Change and Madam Romina for that, for leadership on that. But I guess that we need to continue that momentum and not be extremely ambitious in this regard. That's all. I'm not sure if we have any time for questions.
Thank you so much, Hamza. I hope you will stay connected with us online. Thank you. Uh, Thank you for breaking down complex issues so clearly with us. We now move forward from data to deeper reflection on governance systems. Climate ambition only becomes reality when institutions, laws, and accountability work together. To guide us on this journey, we turn to one of the most respected voices in climate policy. I invite Mr. Ali Toki Sheikh, climate change expert, for his keynote remarks. Thank you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so very much. I feel very honored that you have given me this opportunity at this esteemed forum. And I'm elated by your introduction, ma'am. I don't know if I can justify my sharing my reflections with you, but first let me begin with report. I hope you have familiarized yourself with this report. I want to commend Dr. Ismail and your colleagues, Kashif, excellent job. And it shows a growing interest in this domain. If I'm not mistaken, 2 reports, one recently by Karan Das and one UNDP, and now this one. This one has set a much higher bar, and therefore this body of literature now needs to be taken more seriously. And this report has raised many issues, and if I have to sum it up, there is only one word, how to mitigate our risks. I think it's only about risks. I don't have any particular uh, knowledge about carbon trading, carbon markets. I have abiding interest in transparency and a little bit of exposure that I had. I want to share with you that I worked with a company in Tanzania, in Zambia, and one more country. In a very short period of time, we secured concessions for that company to the tune of about 15 million hectares. And they had approached me in Pakistan that 350,000 hectares have been given concession of mangroves, and we want some concession in Pakistan. So they hired me for Pakistan, and I told them Pakistan's market is not ready. Many issues have not been resolved, and I don't think I can help you in that domain. They took me to these 2 or 3 African countries, and the concessions were very large, that I got scared. And then they wanted to send me to Sundarban in Bangladesh and Fiji. And when I did research on Fiji, I found that this is not something for me because the risks were too high. The exposure of the communities, the traditions, and to biodiversity and natural resource base was too high. And therefore, I distanced myself, and since then I have not followed this debate very closely. But I do want to share with you 2 or 3 points before I comment on 1 or 2 aspects of this trade. There are many options, and let me share with you 4 or 5 options that we have. One is this trading option, and the journey has several risks. We have been talking about them, and we'll talk about them again. There's another proposition, and that is a domestic emissions trading market, which means that companies can sell to each other. Angro can sell to Mari, and Mari can sell to, I don't know, Aramco, and so on and so forth. That way, when the private sector is trading that, you are effectively trying to reduce your emissions. The government gets some revenue. People get clean air in the process if there are actual reductions. But most importantly, more credible baselines are made. If I want to buy emission from Engro and my name is Shell, I will put a lot of private sector resources to make sure that Engro is not overcharging me, or they are actually reducing those emissions that they are trading with me. So that degree of robustness is much stronger in domestic emissions market, especially if it involves 2 independent players, money-making players, private sector players, non-state players, I mean. And that also means that the emphasis moves from forests, grasses and mangroves and forests to urban quality of life issues, urban emissions, cost of doing business that gives you competitiveness in the international marketplace. Because each emission during a production process has a dollar figure to it. It adds to your cost of import or export. And as consumers, as users, we pay for that. But if they reduce in the process, their international competitiveness can presumably increase. So that is one option countries have, including many countries in our neighborhood. One of the best markets. It has many advantages also. Some I mentioned, but now let me come to another level of advantages. Let's say European emissions trading market is one of the oldest ones. Very evolved, very well respected. If you partner with them by way of example, it's quite possible that your CBAM challenge of barriers on your trade with them because of your emissions is addressed indirectly. Your emissions go down your competitiveness increases, and you secure a market that is your second largest trading market. So there is an advantage to connecting to this market, this mechanism. China is world's largest trading market, one of the newest ones. I think they started only 5-7 years ago, but it's the largest market. While the European market has substantially reduced their emissions from a baseline year, Chinese emissions reduction is not deep yet. But as they close their net zero emissions deadlines, it will take them very short period of time to actually begin reducing. And right now, because China is Pakistan's largest trading partner, it's much easier for us to join that market instead of having our own market. And what we do there, we first join them as observer, learn how it works, and slowly some of us, some engrows of this Pakistani business landscape also begin to trade. And what would happen is that when China wishes to or decides to substantially reduce its emissions, they'll buy from your trading partner in high quantities. And in the process, Pakistan will not only make money and reduce the cost of doing its business, but also substantially reduce its NDC commitments, if you see the linkages there. So that's a benefit. California market is very famous, very mature, very rich market, so large that it's like Punjab is larger than many countries of the world. Californians' economy is larger than many countries of the world. And now they are expanding to some Canadian states. And they are so powerful in their emissions that Donald Trump, despite his best effort, has not been able to reduce their emissions trading market and stringent emissions trading emission standards. So that's far from us, very sophisticated, very expensive, but EU and China do offer. And India has recently started trading, developing its own trading market. It's very complex, very sophisticated, it's new, it has not given results, but they are piloting it. It's not the national level market. And piloting alone started about 5 years ago and will go another 2 or 3 years ago before they are able to showcase that this is what we are doing. But the number of sectors they have covered compared to the number of sectors that we have covered in our NDC or in other policies is much fewer. And therefore their space or canvas will be much higher. So at a strategic level, I just wanted to, because there are many younger faces, ma'am, with your permission, I wanted them to step back and see what are other options. There's another option. That was supported in Pakistan by the World Bank through Red Plus. And Red Plus was that we'll give you readiness grant. You develop a baseline of your forests. And after that, if you reduce your deforestation based on that, we'll pay you for that. So that's very, very simple proposition to do. You reduce your deforestation and that way your carbon sink increases. If you increase, you get higher payments. That was an excellent project. And in my I've worked with the Ministry of Climate Change, madam, before many of these younger people were born, when President Zardari was the environment minister. And in my experience, the Ministry of Climate Change has written only one proposal. All other proposals by Ministry of Climate Change were written by the consultants. The Red Plus was the only about $4 million proposal that was written. And we did a mistake there. The data survey that we did for forestry was not very reliable. The World Bank ran away. And we have not tried to fix it, and we tried to cover it up. And covering it up is one issue that increases your risks. Like, for example, if the data was not very scientifically reliable, a potential spotter walked away from you. And if your data is not robust in NDC 1, 2, or 3, then you're showing the emissions level that do not actually happen. Our growth rate is maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4%. It is not at the stage where it was in 60s, 70s, or 80s. But unfailingly, we have exaggerated and provided in our NDCs a growth rate that is not realistic, that's not happening. And that growth rate is beyond the projections of World Bank, IMF, or Pakistan's own state bank. So therefore, when you say this, then Ministry of Climate Change is the only one that's using that higher data set. Government of Pakistan does not in its own projections. So when you do that, then by implication, you're saying that my emissions are higher. And then you're trying to trade emissions that have not actually happened. You have exaggerated your emissions. I hope my point is clear. So Pakistan's emissions are not as high as a higher growth rate given in the NDC would project. If you revise that as per actual economic growth rate as per the State Bank's reports in the last 10 years, our emissions will reduce substantially. And then a potential buyer will say, okay, this is what you have. And since we are not engaging in that exercise, we are delaying a realistic market evolution in the country. So World Bank, NDC, emissions trading market. And emissions trading market, just before I jump to next point, Ministry of Climate Change did a study. I don't know, I didn't want to speak about Ministry of Climate Change, ma'am. I'm taking the liberty. Did a study some years ago. I got that study. I think if you struggle hard on Google, you can find it. Even though oftentimes it will say not available, but you can find it. It did a survey. It was studied, undertaken with the help of JICA about 7 or 8 years ago to study emissions trading market in Pakistan. They did a survey of private sector of Pakistan. 21 or 29 large private sector companies, like I keep giving the name of Anglo, such large size companies showed their willingness and potential. And based on that, the study recommended that Pakistan has the potential to start its own emissions trading market as a building block for emissions trading through this route. Because once you do that, you will have a robust database, baselines. Then you would have expertise, capacities in private sector, in the provinces and different places that we have just heard from our colleagues. So that study had recommended this, but instead of following the study or rejecting the study, we started developing guidelines, and the guidelines now exist, and that is a very positive thing that we have in this at this stage. So coming back, these three things I mentioned, there's one last possibility I want to highlight for you, because we need to know the broader picture and then we decide which road we want to carry, which path suits Pakistan. It's not just one, you can have more than one path to follow, but at least we know that what exists. UNDP also has a window working through the private sector. And many sovereigns have created options for them, sovereigns meaning countries, have created an option with them how we can go and take advantage of emissions trading under Article 6.2, not 6.4. For example, Switzerland's government, I want to give you an example. Mobilize the private sector, because Switzerland is the capital of banking sector and the insurance sector and the reinsurance sector, and a lot of oil and gas sector. They got together with the help of private sector, mobilized resources, and created a non-profit organization called KIRK, K-I-R-K. You can Google and find out. Supported by the private sector. KIRK will go to a developing country like Pakistan, undertake studies, and buy their emissions on behalf of these private sector companies. And that way, a buyer, instead of having to come, large size company, reinsurance, for example, will find it very difficult to operate and visit several times over, but a smaller window can. And one fascinating project that they had, and that's very interesting project that I want to share with you. They engaged with the government of Thailand to reduce the emissions of Bangkok city. This is absolutely fascinating. मैडम इससे ज़्यादा fascinating चीज़ और कोई नहीं है कि एक बंदा आके कहता है कि these emissions are killing you in Lahore and you have to spend millions and billions of rupees to clean your air. We'll come and buy your emissions and we'll provide you electric vehicles and their charging stations. And that way, you will reduce the fossil fuel based public transportation in the city of Bangkok, and you will, over a period of 4 or 5 or 7 years, eliminate that old fleet and new fleet will be operating. A beautiful example in carbon trading, a beautiful carbon. And there the UNDP comes in, as I gave you example. You're working with private sector, but UNDP, as a custodian of UNFCCC system, bring that credibility and legitimacy. And the private sector company that did that in Bangkok has now grown. It shares, it was a small company that just had some ideas, some entrepreneurs. Many of us can be entrepreneurs of that kind of work. And now it has charging stations, is getting buses made, and so on and so forth, and the city is benefiting. So therefore, the examples that I have tried to illustrate to you, in some ways tell us it's not only the forest and mangroves that one has to hedge, or there's a lot of real life issues around us that can be part of this ecosystem of carbon trading. I hope I made my point clear. Now, based on that, now let's come to this report. A fascinating report. I cannot stop admiring you. And you have written it very gently. And I want to focus only last 3 pages that has 9 heads, 9 headings. And I've converted them into 9 slides. And I've given them some text as leader of opposition, because I do not want to see the clothes of the naked emperor. It is very fashionable in our country to praise the government's small steps without defining and articulating our risks clearly enough. Our future rests how safely we can play. And if we can charter this journey together by being safe, I think we'll be in much. मैम अब मुझे बता दीजिएगा कहाँ से ऑन होना है इसमें. Nine slides taken from this book. And I want to say a few things in very categorical terms so that I do not mince my words. I want to base on a case study. Case study is our blue carbon contract with a consortium of companies, signed in which year most of us will not know. What the value, most of us will not know. Under what policy, most of us will not know. Whether or not the federal policy approved it at the time or no, most of us will not know. It's a classical example of a non-transparent transaction coming at a time when the global market for carbon trading was sinking. It helped resuscitate the global market. But it started at a time, or in a way, that has no transparency attached to it. Everywhere I look at, there'll be additional risks. I hope nobody has said this thing in as categorical terms. And if some mafias kill me today, you'll know why it was happened. It was world's largest blue carbon project, $350,000 hectares, signed without the explicit permission of Government of Pakistan in absence of policies, national or provincial. We don't know the coastal areas where we have marine authority is a provincial subject or because of national security a federal subject. Fifth, it took many years, but there was no hint in the media. There was no report. Nobody knew it was being negotiated. And there are no clear, defined rights of ownership of the local communities. Nobody knows how many people lived there. There was no census, and there's no record of that. To date, as far as I know, there is no fencing of the area. It has not been demarcated. The proponents can come and take 100 kilometers, 100 meters to this side or the other side. And 3.1 million credits were sold, but we have to date not seen any projections from the concerned department from the Government of Pakistan or from the Government of Sindh. There's no legal framework, as far as we know from this case study, for benefit sharing. We don't know the community will benefit or not. Setting up some dispensaries or primary schools does not mean that the community is a beneficiary. It is misleading, equitable benefit sharing that your report has highlighted. So, oftentimes it's projected as a best example from Pakistan to many Pakistanis, but to me it's an example, a classical example of non-transparent transaction that sets a bad precedent. And coming from that, countless companies have been scouting different parts of the country in all provinces to get licenses and to get demarcated, even for smaller patches now. It is happening while we speak. Now, based on that, now look at some of those slides. Now I will run those 9 slides, otherwise it will take much longer. When we did our first one, there wasn't anything. Now we have the guidelines. I hope all of us know guidelines are no substitute to a policy. I'll finish in 10 minutes, inshallah. We need a policy. And anything that has interprovincial bearing has to be approved by Council of Common Interest, CCI. And it has to go to PCCC, Pakistan Climate Change Council, because it deals with national federal rights. I gave you example of Bangkok. If this thing was to happen in Pakistan, we will not know that carbon emissions, which are otherwise so negative, is a provincial property or a federal property. If it's a provincial property, proceeds will go to them, to Bangkok city or to Lahore city. If it's a federal property, it will come to the federal government. That issue is not resolved, we'll see that also. You have seen these slides, I don't have to take much time on this. And the federal provincial issue that I mentioned is unresolved. No wonder Sindh, KP, and Punjab are all developing their own climate trading related projects or policies or strategies, oftentimes in isolation from each other, and certainly without taking the federal government concerned ministries into picture. It's free for all as far as the policy domain is concerned. We don't have a governance roadmap. And that's an important miss for us to have. These are all bullets. If you are familiar with the report, you will know them. Unless there are independent grievance mechanisms that go beyond the hierarchies of government, engage all the stakeholders, from communities to the private sector, from provinces to the city government, the consultative process is not complete enough. And then some speakers have already highlighted the need for baseline. If we don't have the growth rate as a reliable figure in an NDC, you think the climate data that will come and the baseline will be more reliable? We need to think very seriously about this. And having a robust database or baseline is essentially a non-federal issue to do. Not GCISC, not somebody else here. And already I see that there is a competition between provinces and the federal government. Each one is trying to develop their own baseline, and non-wire would mean not live, not up to date. It may be digital, but it has to be fed by someone, so it's not updated, will not be updated as required. And it's not integrated with global systems and global markets either. It's our own. A client will call you, will say, okay, we will upload new information. You can visit us on Monday. And that opens inefficiency and all that. You have mentioned some very interesting countries in the report. I want to give you an example from Costa Rica. A fascinating example. In this sense, they have introduced a legislation. We don't, we just have guidelines where the carbon rights are defined. Here, our climate change rights are defined by superior judiciary under the right to life. Their constitution now decides carbon rights as a separate heading in their constitution. And then Article 6.4 framework is filled. It is live as far as Costa Rica. And they have set up a competent authority that you have recommended for Pakistan. One authority where the work is not overshadowed. A benefit of having an independent authority is that somebody is accountable. If it is part of a bigger machine, it becomes a black box. Accountability diminishes. Efficiency diminishes. People are engaged or distracted by other work. And going back to Costa Rica, FPIC is legally required. And you know what is FPIC? Who can tell me from the audience? Anyone? Pardon? So, do you think we had FPIC for mangroves or juniper? That's the difference. That's why I call it Costa Rica so inspiring. Even before their first concession, they are trying to do. And very importantly, they have firewalled 2% of indigenous territory for ancestral use. When I went to Zanzibar, chieftains have been living there for centuries, and their rights are customary rights. And they go to the forest and different parts of the forest, and they talk to the souls of their ancestors. It's not simple graveyard like Muslims have. That can often be flooded now because of climate change. So their relationship with their ancestral lands is very, very different. But then designating a specific area for that, and I'm certain in many parts of Pakistan that may also be the part. I referred to missing sectoral baselines that I think is a starting point. It will take 2-3 years to begin with. Different sectors would mean cement, steel, construction, and so on and so forth. And then there'll be a provincial part of it, and then the national part of it. You can build a pyramid from the factory level and outlet level, from Lucky Cement to the cement sector. So imagine if you prioritize certain sectors and say, okay, first 5 years I'll focus on these 3 or 4. That's where the robust database can come. We don't need to spread ourselves with starting like India with 12. And it's very important is that existing data sets use modern technology, AI, satellite information, remote sensing, and so forth. It doesn't have to be. Give me 2 minutes, I'll wrap up and then I'll come. So my colleagues have talked about capacity building as well. I leave it for a moment, and I think I spent sufficient time of my life in capacity building. I think I'm not too convinced that there's a capacity gap in the country. I think there's a gap in empowerment. We don't trust people. I think, sir, you mentioned very rightly, we depend on international experts. National expert doesn't have a value. Another country would come and say, get concessions for me and I go and work for them, but my own country will not. And I'm a small example. At the provincial level, at the district level, the government level, the process of empowerment is the process of capacity building. New trainings, new degrees, PhDs is not, should not be equated as capacity building. I mentioned about this with social safeguards and red systems and others. It's very important for us that we benchmark, and this report has successfully done that by giving 5 or 4 case studies. We need to ensure that happens. This is probably the heart of it. Revenue generated by emissions trading is no substitute to international climate finance coming from different sources, be it bilateral, be it GCF, be it loss and damage, or any other source. But there's no clarity either in government of Pakistan or in international documentation saying that this can serve as additionality. And that has to be seen that we sell the heritage and assets of communities. We pledge them for 50 or 70 years. And then we say, since you have a stream of revenue coming from emissions trading, and therefore you are no more eligible for DCF financing or loss of damage financing. I think that's putting the communities on the wrong end of the stick. It has to be more equitable, more inclusive, more transparent to ensure that these propositions are negotiated well in time. Example, if Pakistan has already done a transaction on mangroves, GCF could very well say, oh, you are already generating revenue from there, therefore your project is ineligible for any mangrove protection or expansion. So that's the seriousness of this question. And finally, not finally, benefit sharing. Sorry, I'm going on. Third-party audit is at the heart of it. And it's costly, it's time-consuming, but it gives you credibility. Only a third party can tell you whether or not a transaction is transparent, whether or not it's being delivered, and the community monitoring is not just sentimental, it has some practical value behind it. The biggest casualty in the process is the trust. The investor, if does not have the trust in your data sets, in your baseline, in your rules, your laws, your division of responsibilities between provinces and different tiers of government, you will be a loser in that sense. And nothing succeeds like success. just need one case study of a transparent transaction. And it's a long journey. I think this was my last one. I've seen a lot of impatience in last several years, as if a fita aaj kat jayega, kal there'll be somebody walking in your office with hard cash. It's not carbon trading. It's a journey of at least a decade. Anything that comes sooner will need to be absolutely clear that it's transparent and doesn't smell foul. Because in the journey for a transparent, robust, and credible carbon market, our journey is just starting. It has just begun, perhaps, or perhaps not even yet, because we have not sorted out whose responsibility is after all. That issue is still on the table. So having said that, I assume that the font is small and many people sitting at the back may not have been able to see that. But these are things from your report. It's not me necessarily giving you something that you are not familiar with. I want to thank you for your patience. Thank you. ये आपको ये बताएंगे.
मोहम्मद इब्राहिम खान WWF से. एक तो पहले एक जो प्रेजेंटर ने एक बात कही थी कि रेड प्लस का जो NFMS MRV सिस्टम डेवलप किया था वो PFI नहीं किया था. ये गलत है. ये WWF ने किया था. ये सारी असाइनमेंट WWF के पास थी और उसने नेशनल लेवल पे किया है और सब नेशनल लेवल पे ये सारी चीज़ें की हैं. दूसरा सर आपने बताया कि बेसलाइन उसमें मसला है, लेकिन फॉरेस्ट्री सेक्टर में बेसलाइन बड़ी ठीक ठाक अवेलेबल है. जो WWF ने हमने इसको बनाया है और 2012 से लेके 2020 तक 4 साल के इंटरवल पे बाकायदा डिफॉरेस्टेशन, डिग्रेडेशन, एफॉरेस्टेशन, रिफॉरेस्टेशन और रेस्टोरेशन की बाकायदा हमने एनालिसिस की हुई और ये सारे रिपोर्ट्स NFMS पार्क की वेबसाइट पे अवेलेबल है. और ये वेबसाइट है रेड प्लस ही के दौर में ये डेवलप हुआ था. तो थोड़ा सा मतलब इसको अपडेट करना चाहिए था कि और सेक्टर में मुझे पता नहीं है, हो सकते हैं इंडस्ट्रीज़ और एनर्जी और इसमें बेसलाइन की कमी हो, लेकिन फॉरेस्ट्री सेक्टर में इट्स वेल डेवलप्ड. तो ये क्लैरिफिकेशन मैं करना चाह रहा था. तो इस पे अगर आपने कोई काम किया है तो आप अगर काइंडली अपडेट करें.
Thank you. I think it's very important for us, and it's very encouraging to see that a very credible professional organization like WWF has done the. I know to the extent of Red Plus project, it showed an increase in area under forest, and that was contested. I don't know WWF was engaged in this or not, but I know that database was supposed to serve as a readiness project to take us to the next stage whereby we could benefit from that. And one of the problem is the data sets continue to be at a very macro level. If I try to bring it down to the provinces and to the district levels or sub-district levels, we'll be looking at each other's face. And for credible data sets, it's very important. And it has its own value in many other contexts also. If I could place, by way of example, data set on population expansion, increase or decrease in forest, incidence of poverty, education, and so on and so forth, you can see the causation and interrelationships. But since the data sets at that level are absent in forestry sector, it does not tell you that what's the prevalence of biodiversity, by way of example, in different regions or different sub-regions. So thank you for telling us that WWF has done and we don't expect anything less from WWF. But as far as the government of Pakistan is concerned, it still needs to give us a credible baseline database at the national, provincial, and district and sub-district levels. Thank you. Yeah.
So Togi Sahab, if you also allow, and the participants, if you can take a group picture, because the madam has to leave, she has a meeting, and then we can continue this discussion. So maybe we'll just take last one question and then resume to us. Ji, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ji. My name is Mahmood Akhtar Chima, and I'm country representative of IUCN. First of all, let me highly appreciate this initiative and the way that you have presented. In the beginning, Kashif Saab said data deficiency, no doubt. Kashif Saab said involvement of communities, no doubt. But there has been, I think, lot of effort that has gone in. And in Pakistan, we start with negatives. I think we should present the positives, what is there, blessed with resources. And this mangroves example is exceptional. I humbly request and submit Ali Tokir Sheikh Saab. They have complete maps available, and the statement that you have made, you can go miles away. It is not possible. If you go inches away, then those credible institutions that are providing funds, they have a close watch, and they are not able to verify that. The submission that I would like to make on this, I think we have not been educated about. Pakistan vegetative cover, especially mangroves, had gone down to 84,000 hectares, right? And this has gone, now we have done this independent study, Dr. Don McIntosh, and the findings of that study, that you can see visible change that Pakistan has brought, and the relevant stakeholders, and especially the government of Sindh and Forest Department, the role that they have played. I think we need to place this on record and further undertake in-depth studies. IUCN, WWF, and partners that are playing a role in this vegetative cover need to be acknowledged. The second point that I would like to make, I think this is not only a carbon initiative. There is a lot of strength that lies in provinces, and we need to capitalize on that. Provide a framework at the federal level to facilitate provinces to earn from these opportunities. We are not able to provide that framework. These guidelines and studies are insufficient to convince international stakeholders to provide this financing. Third point that I would like to make is, I think this is a small initiative, much larger opportunities that Pakistan is offering this biodiversity credit. There's trophy hunting. Mr. Hamza said, IUCN, WWF, local communities worked. In Gilgit-Baltistan this year, 1.4 million US dollars the local communities have earned. Same in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. I think we need to amplify that, replicate and upscale, go to international community for generating revenues. Who says that local communities are not being equitably? 80% of this produce is going to communities. And I
Shima
humbly
sir, we
suggest
can,
that
yeah.
you need to incorporate this and provide this equitable benefits to local communities. And IUCN has worked decades, and we will be very happy to facilitate, to provide opportunities and work together to take this initiative forward. I wish there were several studies, the private sector engagements, first time in Pakistan, that we have organized dialogues in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad to
Sir, thank
raise
you very
these
much.
awareness.
Let us have
Thank
a
you.
quick
Thank you
response.
very
So
much
you want
and
to
look
add,
forward to work
and
together.
I also want to add something to this. Maybe first.
Thank you for your set of questions. Um, I stand corrected, but I hold to my ground that the area under concession that I talked about is neither demarcated nor fenced. I stand to that. If I cannot answer your other questions because they are outside from today's topic, one last point that I wish to make, and that's an important point. IUCN and WWF did remarkable work about 10 years ago when your name got in Guinness Book of Record by planting mangroves. You'll remember that. You will also remember that a billion trees tsunami resulted in very large scale plantation and then under 10 billion project. As a climate change researcher, I want to tell you why these good developments were also negative. All three were the missed opportunities in carbon trading. If you had, not you personally, if we as Pakistanis had done the calculations that what kind of carbon sink it will create, this was a ready CDM project earlier on, and then a carbon trading project. So when we come negative, it's not that we want to be negative. Our job is to do a realistic analysis and then leave it on policymaker whether or not they accept it or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Togi sahab. But just may I quickly चीज add करूं sir, on the Sin Delta Blue, we have presented this as a case study in a very comprehensive detail. Secondly, जो आपने framework की बात की, एक जो मेरा ख्याल है overlapping theme है वो equity and benefit sharing के ऊपर है. Madam, taking benefit of your presence, we have prepared a draft framework. We have given it to the MOCC, and I think if there is an interest from this consultation, we can, with the consent of the ministry, can also open it up with the for consultation with everyone. So maybe we can now move towards the group picture and small tea break. Yeah. Chivasa, if you allow, we will just continue this conversation. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
So
much.
we'll take a group picture.
So let's, I would request everyone to come forward for a group picture. Officer, Asian Development Bank, Mr. Dr. Irfan, Deputy Director, Environment, PPIB, Ms. Zainab Naeem, Associate Research Fellow, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, Mr. S.N. Kamran, Senior Technical Consultant, Spark 6 Program, and Mr. Ayan Bhutto, Director General Environment and Climate Change, Coastal Development Department, Sindh, and finally, in the last, Mr. Syed Buland Suhail, Managing Partner, Suhail and Partners LLP. I request all the panelists to please come forward to the stage. Thank you.
So we are joined by a very distinguished panel of speakers. Initially, we had planned to run two round of questions, but I understand a lot of colleagues have a flight back to travel back. So what we'll do is to have a single round of conversation with each of the speaker, and we'll give 8 to 10 minutes for everyone to have their remarks. So first, maybe Essen Saab, if I can turn to you. So you work as a senior technical consultant with Spark 6, and we know that the Spark 6 has been very active in terms of providing the capacity building to Pakistan in terms of the preparedness for this carbon market work. Now, I think from the morning session, we also saw that a lot of good work has already been done around this. But maybe from your experiences, can you walk us through what are some of the areas where Pakistan has made progress, and also areas where you think it's still at the federal and provincial level the support is required. And secondly, if you can also club this question with your perspective on some of the, I think, core issues when we talk about strengthening the foundational frameworks around this. What would be your perspective on this?
Assalamu alaikum ji. Thank you for having me. So, sir, thank you for having me, and it's a great report, ji, and congrats to everybody who researched on it. And the key finding from the report, as I mentioned earlier, is that a lot of work has been done, but there are some gaps, so we should work together on it. Work-wise, you see, Pakistan has always been a little ahead of its competitors without the institutional capacity. During the CDM days, जो UNFCCC का program था, a lot of companies registered CDM projects. They made a lot of money. Voluntary market के अंदर अगर आप देखें तो काफ़ी companies ने millions of dollars monetize किए हैं पाकिस्तानी companies ने, and they have earned this money in carbon credits. Article 6 also, what I'd like to explain is that this is a very new market for everybody, for all countries. So the ministry has done a lot of good work, fast tracking the guidelines last year in Baku. One of the good things they did, which I'm glad actually, is that the rules they अब कुछ ज़्यादा हो गया, but the public stakeholder, I think Transparency gave its comments, VCMI gave its comments, all of that they have done with multiple donor organizations, national organizations. The rules should be coming soon. Hello. So hopefully a lot of these things, a lot of the gaps identified will be addressed in those operational rules also. Where I think where it is important is something I picked up from your report actually, which is the interoperability of government departments. You see right now, commerce, finance on the federal level, on the provincial levels, there is a working group that is coming up now, but because now there is a lot of money involved, a lot of foreign investment can come into Pakistan, so a lot of the senior management of these institutions needs to work together to know where the opportunities are. A lot of the opportunities get missed. जिस तरह पंजाब के अंदर we have made sure कि जो PC1 है उसके अंदर prior consideration for carbon credits लिखा जाए और उसके financial models के अंदर वो showcase किया जाए. because one of the most important elements of the carbon markets is that you need to show the need for the carbon finance. It's called additionality. जब additionality fail करती है तो integrity of the project fails, क्योंकि वो कहते हैं तो project पहले ही बड़े फायदे में है, ये तो आप अपनी पॉकेट के लिए कर रहे हैं या ये आप किसी पॉलिसी के अंडर कर रहे हैं, कंप्लायंस के लिए कर रहे हैं. So it's very important for everybody to create the financial projections and the need of the carbon markets in your project from the get-go. And I think that's where a lot of our government projects can benefit also from that. Especially कि आपको loans वगैरह तो मिल जाते हैं, सारा कुछ हो जाता है, but जो आपके operational expenses हैं, जो sustainability है, फिर जो आपने benefit sharing भी करनी है. देखें, benefit sharing is forestry के project में तो हो जाएगी, सारी community land है, मगर आप जब एक IPP लगाते हैं, आप कोई landfill का project कर रहे हैं, आप transport का project कर रहे हैं, उसमें भी benefit sharing है. You're giving back to the community, you're training them. तो इस सिलसिले में ये काफ़ी हद तक बड़ी holistic approach होती है. It's not just money, you're creating jobs, you're doing vocational training, it all becomes part of the project. And secondly, I think the most important thing at the moment जो मुझे समझ आती है वो है कि we need to open up the market. You see, what's going to happen is Article 6 जिस तरह मैं पहले कह रहा था 4 पेजों का डॉक्यूमेंट है. It's to the interpretation of the countries and how they work together on what laws and regulations they want to implement while doing these carbon projects. Now there are very few large buyer countries जिनके bilaterals काफ़ी ज़्यादा हो गए हैं different मुल्कों के साथ. So if the market reaches a saturation point where the buyer country does not require the credits anymore, then we don't have those credits to sell anywhere, so we don't have a carbon market. So it's a trial and error ki game ji. We need to open it up and just, get things going and थोड़े थोड़े tweaks और वो चीज़ें होती रहेंगी. और जब आप बायर कंट्रीज़ के साथ बातें करेंगे, उनकी इतनी इंटरनेशनल टीम्स हैं, जो VCM की सारी बायर कंट्रीज़ तो कहती हैं वॉलंटरी मार्केट के थ्रू आएँ ताकि ये सारे सेफ गार्ड हों, ये चीज़ें उनकी टीम्स आती हैं, तो बड़ी एक लर्निंग और भी मिलेगी. तो आई थिंक वी शुड नॉट create bottlenecks. We should open up the market and indigenous देखें कितने projects आ जाएंगे. आप घाना की बात करते हैं, ब्राज़ील की बात करते हैं, indigenous 10, 20, 30 project लग जाएंगे. मगर international investors को भी तो लेके आना है सर. Why? What are you going to give them for them to choose Pakistan over Ghana? So आपको walls को नीचे करना है, program को incentivize करना है, and look at the bigger picture also. So I think the ministry is doing a great job, and hopefully by Q1 of next year we should see some action actually rather than just theoretical practices. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hasan Saab, I think, for highlighting both the progress and the challenges. While I do completely agree on the need for bringing these investments, but at the same time, I think what we have been emphasizing through this report, that if you open up the markets without these, fundamentals, putting the fundamentals right in place, so you refer to the benefit sharing mechanisms. I think you're right. I mean, we cannot talk exactly how the benefit sharing should look like in a certain sector, but having the framework is a first place in terms of these guidelines. And maybe if I can turn to you, Dr. Irfan Saab. So within the energy sector, the Private Power Investment Board has been doing a lot of renewable energy projects. So can you give a perspective in terms of, from the power sector, what steps can encourage the companies, particularly in the energy sector, to come up with these projects?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. First of all, as far as for the power sector, it's around, we have around 54 projects, RE-based projects in Pakistan right now, and out of these projects, 18 projects are registered in different carbon registries to ready sell their credits in the market, and few of them are already sold their transact credits. And first we need a clear policy framework that outlines the procedure, authorization, project authorization, and the credit issuance and the trading mechanism, due to which rules we stable and transparent, and from this we can develop the confidence of the investor. And the second point is the monitoring, reporting, and verification mechanism. As already already said that the policies, we have the carbon markets guidelines right now, but we don't have the uh, MRV systems in operational, and it is essential for the projects. A robust MRV framework uh, not only ensures environmental integrity, but also minimize the risk of disputes and the credit rejection in international markets. And the uh, third point is we have streamlined and time-bound approval process, which is backed by the different national institutions. Like it's not only the MOCC involved in whole this process, and it's the responsibility of other institutions, including private sector, government entities, and the communities. Like we in power sector, PPIB plays an important role in carbon credits mechanism, uh, with the involvement of MOCC and the other stakeholders. Uh, the power producers is also involved in this, and the regulator is also the part of this. Regulator, here's the regulator is NEPRA. Uh, and lastly, the developers need a clarity on benefit sharing arrangement, because we have no uh, sharing mechanism. Because in पावर सेक्टर, अगर हम पावर सेक्टर की बात करते हैं तो जब रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग की बात करेंगे तो कॉरस्पॉन्डिंग एडजस्टमेंट, बिकॉज रिन्यूएबल के क्रेडिट्स ऑलरेडी चीपेस्ट क्रेडिट्स हैं मार्केट में, तो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कॉस्ट इंक्रीज कर जाती है, जिसकी बेसिस पे कोई भी जो डेवलपर है वो इस तरफ इन्वेस्ट नहीं करता, क्योंकि वो उसकी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कॉस्ट इंक्रीज कर जाती है जब वो इसकी कैलकुलेशन करता है। जब इसमें कंसल्टेंसी फीसेस होती हैं, डिफरेंट रजिस्ट्रेशन प्रोसेस, तो नेट बेनिफिट जो उसको मिल रहा होता है वो बहुत माइनर होता है, जिसकी बेसिस पे वो इसमें इन्वेस्ट नहीं करता। आफ्टर द after these guidelines, most of the projects transit their transition phase from CDM towards Article 6, जिसमें हमारे पास अभी currently 5 प्रोजेक्ट्स रजिस्टर्ड हो चुके हुए हैं ट्रांजिशन के लिए, और बाकी प्रोजेक्ट्स भी इसी तरह ट्रांजिशन में जा रहे हैं। जी, थैंक यू।
Thank you, Dr. Irfan. So maybe if Ms. Zainab, so Sustainable Development Policy Institute has also done a lot of work around the policy landscape on carbon markets. So can you share your perspective in terms of how do you see the current institutional framework? What are the gaps? Any reflection on this report, and broadly from the work that you are doing?
Thank you so much. And first of all, congratulations on this very important report. So I'll start with some experiences that we faced when STPI started working around carbon markets. It was 3 years ago. So we started in collaboration with Embassy of Denmark, we started around capacity building because we wanted to assess what is the basic understanding around carbon markets in Pakistan. The key stakeholders were public sector organizations and then private sector organizations. We went into different cities and conducted assessment. So the basics that we found out at that time were especially was it was some sort of carbon markets was considered as some sort of revenue model, but how to tap it. And then the key question that was raised at that time, what exactly is a credit? Is it a token? Is it some coin? Or what exactly is it? Explain that credit to us first. And even after 3 years, we get the same questions. So although it was a buzzword then, and there's still a lot of buzz around it, we have got our policy, as Saab has also mentioned, and I think it's a very great step. But before that, there was a Delta Blue Carbon project. People were amazed how we are working around it. They are providing so many co-benefits to the communities, but then there was a challenge. What Pakistan is getting out of that Delta Blue Carbon project? What is the mechanism in the absence of policy? What is their pricing strategy? And why is it becoming some sort of legal or regulatory aspect for companies to engage in carbon markets? And then there was CBAM. So different sectors like textile sector, they got a bit upset around what we are going to do about it. So the capacity building workshop started. We engaged with Ministry of Commerce, and then there was this Article 6. Then we had COP 27, followed by COP 28 and 29, and just at COP 30, um, we saw a shift in the debate. Voluntary carbon markets they were rampant around the world. But what was happening? There was this aspect of greenwashing attached to it. There was this aspect that Ali Tokir Saab mentioned, that communities were suffering instead of getting benefits out of it. So this time, what the G77 plus China did at COP30, they gave a pushback to these markets. Open coalition on compliance market has been announced. That was one of the first key takeaways that we said at COP30 that we achieved. They gave a pushback to voluntary markets, and they said that no, we want to come up with compliance markets that are actually tailored as per the country's needs and laws. And we will be coming up with our own ETS and our own sort of compliant market system, and then we will make so they were basically negotiating with EU and developed regions that we will make sure that you engage with us. So if you are coming up with CBAM sort of sanctions on us, we will be imposing sanctions through our own kind of ETS, because that is simply not equitable development. So this sort of created a buzz at COP30 as well, and they have been able to successfully push back the voluntary system. So I think the trends are shifting. Now coming back to Pakistan, right after this project that I talked about, we did with Embassy of Denmark, we started sectoral wise assessment. Now, one of the key challenges that is still there, no matter how many policies we develop, or how many investors are there, as Ali Saab mentioned, sectoral data is not there. Sectoral data is missing. So my team, we engaged with small medium enterprises to assess what is their understanding around carbon markets. Now let me tell you, when we talk about carbon markets, and to ensure that we have to get the credits, there is a concept of carbon modeling attached to it. What exactly is carbon modeling, or the GHG inventory as some people call it? आपका जो प्रोजेक्ट है, वो प्रोजेक्ट ने या तो अवॉइड करनी है एमिशंस, या उसको मिटिगेट रिमूव करनी है. सो फॉर्मूला ये है कार्बन मॉडलिंग का. सो द बेसलाइन सिनेरियो एमिशंस माइनस योर प्रोजेक्ट सिनेरियो एमिशंस, और उससे आप मल्टीप्लाई करते हैं एमिशन फैक्टर के साथ. ये एक फॉर्मूला है. फॉर एग्जांपल 1000 आपका डीजल पे एक इंडस्ट्री चल रही थी, उन्होंने सोलर पैनल्स लगा दिए. अब सो अगर डीजल पे 2.86 कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड पर टन इक्विवेलेंट एमिशंस निकल रही थी, तो सोलर पैनल लगाने से वो 2.86 उन्होंने अवॉइड कर दी हैं. ठीक है, सो उस पर वो क्रेडिट्स क्लेम कर सकते हैं. बट इसका ये मतलब नहीं कि रूफटॉप सोलर पे, दैट इज अनदर डिबेट. वैसे वो चीज़ नहीं हो सकती. देर आर मेनी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज अटैच टू इट. मैं इंडस्ट्री की बात कर रही हूँ. बट what इज द इशू अराउंड इट, कि ये वाली मॉडलिंग जब हम प्राइवेट सेक्टर से पूछा कि आपकी ग्रीन हाउस गैस इन्वेंट्री, लाइफ साइकिल असेसमेंट, क्रेडल टू ग्रेव वाला कॉन्सेप्ट आपको रिपोर्ट करना है, ये आप करते नहीं करते. बट इंटरेस्टिंगली जब हमने स्मॉल मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस से पूछा, वो करते हैं. और उनके आइडियाज़ आर सो इनोवेटिव. फॉरेस्ट्री क्रेडिट्स की बात हो रही है, बहुत कॉमन हो गए हैं, उसकी प्राइसिंग कहीं अच्छी है कहीं नहीं है. ग्लोबल मार्केट्स के डायनामिक्स आपको देखने होते हैं टू डिटरमिन विच सेक्टर हैज़ अ लॉट ऑफ पोटेंशियल. फॉरेस्ट्री के अलावा आपके सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी पोटेंशियल हाईएस्ट है. इनोवेशन जहाँ पर है वहाँ पे हाईएस्ट पोटेंशियल है. आप उस वहाँ इनोवेटिव आइडिया ले आए, कैसे लेकर आएंगे, प्राइवेट सेक्टर कैसे लेकर आएगा, प्रोजेक्ट कैसे डेवलप करेगा. देखिए इसमें यू रिक्वायर टू थिंग्स, पेशेंस एंड कंसिस्टेंसी. कार्बन क्रेडिट्स अचानक से नहीं आएंगे, रेवेन्यू आपको नहीं जनरेट होगा. सो कमिंग टूवर्ड्स what exactly can be done, आपकी प्राइसिंग पॉलिसी आ गई है. एंड देन वी ऑल्सो असेस पोटेंशियल इन पंजाब. सो पंजाब का जो साउथ पंजाब में फॉरेस्ट्री है उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा पोटेंशियल है. एग्रो फॉरेस्ट्री में बहुत ज़्यादा पोटेंशियल है कार्बन क्रेडिट्स का. बट देन देयर इज अनदर पोटेंशियल, वेस्ट सेक्टर में बहुत हाईएस्ट लेवल पोटेंशियल है और आपके क्रेडिट की प्राइस बहुत ऊपर जाती है. लेकिन जब पॉलिसी आपकी नेशनल लेवल पे है तो सूबे किस तरह से उसमें इन्वॉल्व हो सकते हैं, वो इंटरऑपरेबिलिटी की जो बात है वहाँ पर वो आती है. इंटर एजेंसी और प्रोविंस टू फेडरल कोऑर्डिनेशन, वन ऑफ द की गैप्स दैट वी आइडेंटिफाइड. केपी हैड अ ह्यूज पोटेंशियल रेड प्लस प्रोजेक्ट के बाद, बट देन देयर वाज दिस गैप बिटवीन केपी एंड फेडरल गवर्नमेंट. इसको कैसे लेकर जाने, बायलेटरली इन्वेस्टर्स को लेकर आने, या आई एम बीइंग वेरी ओपन एंड रॉ here with you because these are the challenges that we have assessed. And then there was an aspect of who will get benefit sharing का जो है, कितना किसको benefit मिलेगा. थैंक्स टू द पॉलिसी उसमें हमने मेंशन कर दिया एनडीसीज में कॉरिस्पॉन्डिंग एडजस्टमेंट करानी है, सब कराने, तो इतना इतना बेनिफिट होगा. बट स्टिल वो जो एक हिचकिचाहट आप कह लें वो एग्जिस्ट करती है अभी भी. दैट्स वाई वी आर नॉट एबल टू डू इट. सो उसका सोल्यूशन क्या है? कमिंग टूवर्ड्स योर पॉलिसी आपकी आ गई, प्रोजेक्ट एग्रीगेशन प्राइवेट सेक्टर को लेकर आया. प्राइवेट सेक्टर एसएमई के साथ प्रोजेक्ट एग्रीगेट करे. एसएमई का जो सोल्यूशन है, फॉर एग्जांपल आई वाज डिलीवरिंग अ सेशन एट वन ऑफ द यूनिवर्सिटीज वेयर 15 एसएमईज वर इन्वॉल्व्ड. हमने उसी टाइम बैठ के उनकी लाइफ साइकिल असेसमेंट की क्योंकि उनके पास डेटा था, एंड जो क्रेडिट की प्राइस उनको उनके प्रोजेक्ट में कितनी मिल सकती है. कोई एग्री वेस्ट पे काम कर रहा था, कोई एग्री टेक पे कर रहा था, कोई रिसाइकलिंग पे कर रहा था. ओह, देयर वाज अ ह्यूज पोटेंशियल एंड द काइंड ऑफ क्रेडिट्स और एस्टिमेशन फैक्टर का जो चैलेंज आता है, अगेन डेटा नहीं है तो हम आईपीसीसी का या वेरा के जो मेथडोलॉजीज में एस्टिमेशन फैक्टर है उसको यूज़ कर रहे होते हैं. एंड देन रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी में भी जहाँ इनोवेशन है वहाँ पे आपका क्रेडिट की प्राइस है. बट पता नहीं है हमारे एसएमईज के पास जो यूथ है हमारी, एंड आई विल टॉक अबाउट देम बिकॉज वहाँ पे हम फंस जाते हैं. हम ब्रेन ड्रेन की बात करते हैं बट कार्बन क्रेडिट्स में 64 to 70% आपके यूथ है जिनके पास सॉल्यूशंस हैं. एंगेज देम, you will avoid your brain drain because they have the ideas. There's dearth of ideas, youth have the ideas. ठीक है, उनको प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ एंगेज करें, एग्रीगेट करें. आपकी प्राइसिंग में भी कमी आएगी, सॉरी वो जो कॉस्ट की प्रॉब्लम्स होते हैं, प्रोजेक्ट एग्रीगेशन से आप उनके सोल्यूशंस को स्केल अप करते हैं, एंड देन आपका इंडिजिनस सोल्यूशन होगा, कोई इंटरनेशनल इम्पोर्टेड सोल्यूशन नहीं होगा. सोलर वेस्ट, जो सोलर पैनल वेस्ट का भी हमें क्राइसिस फेस करने पड़ेगा, हमारी कोई गाइडलाइंस भी एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती, उसके लिए सोल्यूशंस मौजूद हैं. राइट. सो अगेन जो आप बात करें नेप्रा की एंड एमओसीसी की, वो भी एक चैलेंज है कि वर्किंग ग्रुप अल्लाह करे बन जो एहसन साहब बात कर रहे हैं, बट अगेन फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री, क्लाइमेट मिनिस्ट्री, कौन सी मिनिस्ट्री कितना शेयर लेगी, वो भी एक बहुत बड़ा मसला है. सो आई थिंक जब आपके वॉलेंट्री में अगर आप प्राइवेट सेक्टर को एंगेज कर देते हैं, आगे जाके जब तक आपके ये कंप्लायंस के मसले सेटल होंगे, आपकी एटलीस्ट कुछ अच्छे सेक्टर्स तो इन्वॉल्व हो ही जाएंगे. थाईलैंड की, एंड आई विल कंक्लूड इट हियर, थाईलैंड में आपके ई रिक्शाज को उन्होंने क्रेडिट्स सेलिंग करना स्टार्ट कर दी. देयर आर सो मेनी प्रोजेक्ट्स दैट आर हैपनिंग इन योर एशियन कंट्रीज, लर्न फ्रॉम देम. आपके ई इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स के जो प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं आपके केपी साइट पे, आपके पंजाब साइट पे हैं, दे हैव अ ह्यूज पोटेंशियल. उनको करें लेकिन सेक्टोरल डेटा लेकर आएँ, बिकॉज इफ़ योर सेक्टोरल डेटा इज़ नॉट देयर, आप जितनी पॉलिसी बना लें, इट विल एंड अप गेटिंग यू नथिंग आउट ऑफ इट, जस्ट लाइक प्रीवियस पॉलिसीज. Why? Because 30 years ago you had people who were more experienced but lacked technical knowledge. Now you have youngsters who understand the scientific technicalities around it because they're studying those subjects. They're getting experience. Although उनका experience 2-3 साल का है, but engage them. You will get more ideas and solutions to the kind of policy enforcement that is actually missing in your country. So that is my answer to your question.
Thank you very much, Zainab, for very thoughtful assessment. Ayan Bhutto Saab, if I can come to you again, I think we saw this in the comments and also as well as in the study. Sindh has, I think, a good example in form of a delta blue carbon, and also a good example because it started before the guidelines were there in place, and we know that how it has successfully restored certain land and also generated what is reported around $40 million in carbon credit. My question to you is how these efforts in the Indus Delta can, in a simple way, can create more opportunities at a country level. And plus, you're also in a better position because one of the things that we've been hearing is this interagency coordination between the federal and provincial. Um, where do you see the challenge when it comes the engagement with the federal government?
Thank you very much, Kashif Saab. Uh, before I come to, I'll come to Indus Delta in the end because since morning we are hearing about it a lot, and there have been contradictions, and so I will clear each and everything that what is actually going on in the government and what its actual status is at the moment. First of all, there has been a question regarding coordination. Everyone has, they think that they believe that there is no coordination available. The act, if you see the Pakistan Climate Change Act, it has given two coordination forums. First is the Pakistan Climate Change Council, headed by the Prime Minister, and second is the Pakistan Climate Change Authority. These are the two available as per the act, and they are working. We had meetings already, although the PCCM meeting has been a bit slow as if compared the triple G council meeting because Prime Minister is very busy man. So, but now with regard to carbon market, there was a concern. There is no forum available. I would like to uh, correct all of you that there is a carbon market working group available, which is being headed by the Ministry of Climate Change, and all of the provinces are on board. And we often have lots of fights over there, lots of disagreements over there, and we because when you see the the carbon market framework, they have said that the province are the from province they have chosen the designated department, but the designated department is not strengthened the way it should be, and this issue gives lots of lacunas and will affect if it's not the designated department is not strengthened properly because it is the source from where the information will be generated and every project will be moved. You have to strengthen that. Then there will be no transparency at all, and there will be then subsequently at these forums and other forums they will be say that this is source of corruption. Now federal government is not willing to empower the provinces with that. Our issue is that we have taken permission from the Sindh cabinet as well. We said that give the power of issuing a letter of intent to the province because we are hiring experts in Sindh for the market registry. And we are going to make a provincial market registry, give all the provinces the same pattern. They maintain the province and we can connect it to the federal. This will stop duplication, the main thing. But some people, they have their egoistic issues going on. I wish that Madam Advisor would have been here so we would have clearly um, tell what the grievances are and where there are deadlock. There now delta blue carbon. Everyone is singing delta blue carbon, but it has become in other sense घर की मुर्गी दाल बराबर. ठीक है? And it is also another bone of contention because if you go to provincial level or federal level, the federal government really doesn't like it. Why the Sindh government has succeeded in that? For that, hindrances are being created. Now, the last payment we received in the DBC was 2023. It's 2025. We have not gotten and received any money in that. And we have generated $14 million in government, $14.77 million we have received in that. So, sir, kindly, it was not wasted, but we have heard something from it. And plus, it was a new thing. We didn't have the provinces or the country did not have proper expertise. We were trusting the people who had approached us, and we did what we could, and we got 40% of the share. Now, I would like to protect the 40%. Now, everyone say, yeah, you have sold it for cheap. Come with me, visit there. I wish you could have visited that area before 2016. There was soil erosion, there was hunger, there was no jobs, there were species were being destroyed, damaged, killed, extinct. And now, after this initiative, look at 2,100 families have been given jobs. And I think I am giving you less numbers of that. The standard of living has increased. The quality of soil has increased. Shrimps are being planted. You come with me. There are two sides of a coin. Just don't look, for God's sake, don't look at the negative part, look at the positive part also. What we have achieved. And I think the report should have covered more about those aspects as well. If Kashif, I am always available for Transparency International over here. This is the Delta Blue. And I feel really bad when people really criticize it because they don't look at the other part, that what was before in that area. Okay, I don't want to go into some other projects as well because some controversial things might happen. So we are not getting letter of authorization from MOCC since last 6 months. We are trying. Our DBC2 is stuck for one reason. What is that reason? MOCC wants us to tell us till 2065 how many tons will be generated, carbon tons will be generated, how many credits will be had. Are we Nostradamus? It's a flood prone area. It has calamities. There are droughts. There are tornadoes in that area. How can we commit to a figure that we are going to make this much money and nobody is here to listen to us? So these are the actual ground realities that our friends don't know, and what we are trying the MOCC and the federal government to understand. That please, for God's sake, trust in us. And उर्दू में कहते हैं कम खाओ गम नहीं खाओ, हम लोग कहते हैं. तो let us share things. Don't लालच नहीं कर, लालच बुरी बला है कि भाई सब कुछ हमें. What have you given to the project? The private firm is planting everything. They are spending everything. You're just giving a barren land where hungry people used to die. The species used to get endangered. Nothing over there. So there should be a credit given to Sindh government and the company that is doing it. With regard to, yes, I agree that there are issues with regard to MRV. MRV should be strengthened. And anything you'd like to know else, I can
No,
also
thank
deliberate
you,
on
Bhutta
that.
Sahab. I think that was a very important perspective that you brought from a provincial level. Maybe, is Jamali Saab, if I can turn to you, and my question would be very similar to what I asked Hassan Saab. So, again, as a development partner, the ADB, has been providing a lot of capacity building and guidance. So, my question to you is, and again, feel free to comment depending on your, expertise from the agriculture sector. What sort of guidance is useful for countries like Pakistan when they start engaging with these carbon markets or explore to engage? And are there any international best practices or case studies from your work?
Thank you, Kashif. So ADB, of course, is a MDB, Multilateral Development Bank. Our core business is investment for development, and but we also do a lot of upstream work, including in carbon markets. So I'll maybe try to answer your question, hoping without getting in trouble with Zulfikar Saab. I think if you look at the carbon markets, a couple of things, if I pick where it's struggled, one, of course, is the pricing uncertainty. That's really stops a lot of people investing in it. The second is the credibility issue, integrity issue. And a lot of, there are so many examples of bad projects that has created these integrity issues. And which means the companies or potential buyers don't trust this anymore. And I think this is where this work, what you are doing, is incredibly important. So congratulations to you and your team on doing this. And coming back to the, where, what can government do? Of course, we keep talking about voluntary markets, Delta Blue, and Botosab. I think I totally agree. I think hindsight is a great thing. We see this could have been done this way. We could have done this way. But at that time, you make a decision what you think is the best. Now, of course, you can build on that. So I think when we criticize Delta Blue, we should keep that in mind. That is the project that has put Pakistan on the map in the world. And one of the reasons we are having these conversations because we've seen the potential that this project has shown. So congratulations to Government of Sindh on that. With regards to, I guess enabling environment to me is the key thing to make this whole ecosystem work. I know it's a cliche to everyone uses this word, but without that, without the proper architecture in place and having all these mechanisms, I think we just had an example in real time, the issues that we are dealing with that can result in those delays in those approvals. Delta Blue 2, now I think investor is sitting there. In 2 months' time, the investor might get frustrated saying, I'm leaving. So I think these streamlined processes are really important. And one of the key part of all of that is the capacity. And I think a lot of what we have done is worked in an ad hoc sort of thing. And I think Zulfikar Saab is a good example. I think we worked very closely with him, and he's an expert on carbon markets. But when he left, I think whole capacity is there, gone. And so, so I'm being very direct and honest here. So, but having, those institutional arrangements where it's a permanent and capacity is there, organizations, for example, like GCISC, I mean, they have their own shortcomings, but if you want to talk about NDC now, you go to walk in that institution, there will be someone who can explain whole history of that. There will be at least 1 or 2 people anyway. We need some of those organizations permanently there who can run the show, who can operate these. And then, of course, the oversight comes from the leadership for sure. But I think these are the things that are really the key ingredients to me that are there. And one of the, in the interest of time, just I think I'll wrap up in a minute. On the policy, I don't want to repeat anything. It's been discussed a lot. Sheikh Saab has touched, I think, quite a few points. One of the things that stuck with me was in the clarity of the rights, for example. A lot of our land is owned by communities, tribal communities. How do we do that project? For example, I'll give you an example of my own project that I'm doing in Punjab, for example, on hill torrents in South Punjab. It's a whole watershed improvement, then irrigation infrastructure, drainage. They're all part of it, but as part of the whole catchment management, the project might be able to plant more than 50,000 acres of land. Now that's community land. Potentially you could think, wow, that's a great project. Let's put it in carbon markets. Now, then whose rights is it? Government is implementing it. People own the land. ADB is a financier. It can very quickly become a landmine for social safeguards. And I can't get past my social safeguards team in ADB if I just explain this to them. They will say, just forget it. So I think these are the realities. I think all of these streamlined processes and clarity on those rules, I think this is absolutely important for us to move forward for this. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, I think, again, for the thoughtful response. Mulin Sahib, if I can, ask you again, you have been, I think, active part of this conversation around carbon markets for some time. And I want to know, you were at COP this year. What are some of the global conversations, and what kind of discussion do you think should Pakistan be aware of as it develops some of these pathways?
I think Zainab covered that actually quite well. At COP, I think a few significant ones are pretty self-evident. There was no agreement on fossil fuels, which gives us an opportunity, especially to uh, develop our own fossil fuel reduction emission policy, especially through bilateral means. Adaptation financing is to triple, which is excellent news. This is our peculiar problem. Our country's huge problem is adaptation financing. We should be coming up with a strategy to utilize Pakistan, the State Bank's green taxonomy, and what Zainab said, Dr. Zainab said, the sectoral mapping to this adaptation financing, which is about to triple. For this, I think we need to come up with some innovative solutions, not only with, I believe, with the State Bank of Pakistan, but also with the SECP and the PSX, and open the bond market, the Sukuk market, Panda bonds, and give some very tangible climate-ready financing pathways to international investors. I'm saying this because I represented the International Chamber of Commerce this year at COP. I'm heading their National Committee on Energy Environment. I'm also part of their International Committee on Carbon Pricing. Their biggest mandate was, and they were the largest UNFCCC partner this year. Their call from the government of Pakistan, as meetings were held at high levels, was please open pathways to us for ready to finance projects. Don't invite us and give us the run around. Sit with us, identify the project, and I believe there's a very healthy project pipeline in all the provinces being developed. They wish for to increase their mitigation financing by at least a third, and similarly, adaptation financing they want to double by next year. They're extremely hungry for investment, the international private sector, and there were 80 CEOs present on the ICC's platform this year. So I think Pakistan needs to really finalize rules. That is extremely important because that's a signal to the international finances that there are clarity around the carbon credits as a is it a commodity, is it a property, token, coin, whatever you want to call it, but you have to have clarity over it. Secondly, there has to be processes around the application and timelines. I mean, that is extremely important. Projects lying for months on end is just not on. Thirdly, I think there has to be clarity around the entire process, of course. Fourthly, VVBs are extremely important. I think uh, without a credible MRV system, without accessible experts, uh, I'm not talking about European experts; they're extremely expensive. I'm talking about Malaysians, Kenyans, people from Africa. We need to first pass rules so that somebody, whether it's intergovernmental, whether it's the NDC bodies, can share the burden of inviting these VVB experts and make them available to the project proponents. So I think a lot is still to be done. I believe the ministry needs to have more focus and vision, get back on track. I think at the time of Zulfikar Saab, things were moving extremely fast in the right direction. I believe the same can take place if there's a little bit of push, from the Prime Minister's office. That's extremely important. But in net, I think the world is ready to see some really credible projects from Pakistan. And both from the compliance market perspective, they're ready to see scalable projects. They're ready to see the bond market open up. I did a session for Cambridge University on bond markets. They asked me to do one, in which AIB was there, ADB representatives were there, others were there. So they're just waiting to see Pakistan come up with climate finance pathways. चाहे वो compliance में हो, heavy scalable projects, landfill projects, dairy projects, which we can deliver, या वो rickshaw projects हो, e-rickshaw. So we need to really do that mapping, like Zainab said. But without the ministry's, lead, I don't think this is possible.
Thank you very much, Buland. And on behalf of TI, I'm grateful to all these speakers. And I think it was a very rich discussion. It sort of helped us to understand both in terms of where we stand, but also in terms of what needs to be done to move these markets forward with confidence. So thank you very much once again for joining this discussion.
A well-deserved round of applause for our panelists. Thank you to our moderator and all the panelists for highly engaging and insightful discussion. So, national strategies only succeed when they are reflected in provincial action. We now shift the spotlight to our provincial leadership to understand how carbon market initiatives are progressing on the ground. I invite Ms. Rizwana Anjum, Team Lead Chief Minister, Punjab Green Credit Program, followed by Mr. Tala Hussain Faisal, Special Secretary, Climate Change, Forest, Environment and Wildlife Department, uh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीवन। सबसे आखिरी प्रेजेंटेशन मुझे दिया गया है। मैं भाग के अपने कमरे में जाके कोट लेकर आई, सोचा कि थोड़ा सा जो है वो लगूं कि मैं बात कर रही हूँ कार्बन मार्केट पे। हाँ, क्योंकि यहाँ पे लगना भी ज़रूरी है और ठीक जगह पे लगे ये भी ज़रूरी है। ओके, लेट्स गो टुवर्ड्स द प्रेजेंटेशन। एक छोटी सी प्रेजेंटेशन मैंने बनाई। वेरी मच थैंकफुल टू रायमा कि मेरे साथ फुल टाइम कोऑर्डिनेशन में रही और एक इनको मैंने रिक्वेस्ट की कि एक छोटी सी प्रेजेंटेशन मुझे देने का मौका दिया जाए। करेंटली आई विल बी discussing about the initiatives which have been taken by the government of Punjab for the carbon market. सबसे पहला इनिशिएटिव जो इस सिलसिले में लिया गया, अच्छा, ये सीएम पंजाब ग्रीन क्रेडिट प्रोग्राम, चीफ मिनिस्टर पंजाब ग्रीन क्रेडिट प्रोग्राम, दिसंबर 2024 में इस प्रोग्राम का आगाज किया गया। इस प्रोग्राम के दीगर मकासद में एक जो बहुत बड़ा मकसद, एक बहुत बड़ा ऑब्जेक्टिव जो शामिल था वो ये था कि पब्लिक सेक्टर के जो प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं उनको कार्बन मार्केट में रजिस्टर करवाना है। तो इस एक मेजर ऑब्जेक्टिव के साथ लेकर के हमने ये पिछले साल दिसंबर में प्रोजेक्ट जो है वो स्टार्ट किया। Basically, the objective was to provide a single window in Punjab that could identify projects and lead the process which culminates in the signing of agreements with the buyers. Basically, जो CM Punjab Green Credit Program has since an year, it is working as a single window solution to help the public sector projects in registering in the carbon market under Article 6 and the VCM. So, अब तक हमने क्या किया, क्या कुछ किया? एक साल हो गया हमें बने हुए। हमने अब तक क्या क्या कुछ किया? सबसे पहली चीज जो थी, जो हमें चैलेंज जिसका सामना करना पड़ा, आई एम वेरी मच थैंकफुल टू ज़ैनब, शी हैज राइटली इंडिकेटेड बिफोर दैट, इट वाज द कैपेसिटी इशू। आपके जो डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं उनको सिर्फ ये पता था कि कार्बन क्रेडिट कोई पैसा होता है, कोई रेवेन्यू होता है, हमें पैसा मिलने वाला है, कैसे मिलने वाला है ये नहीं पता। और फिर उसके बाद एक दूसरी बड़ी कंफ्यूजन कि PC1 जो होता है वो PDD होता है, जो PDD होती है वो PC1 होता है, और जो पिन होती है वो छोटा सा परफॉर्मा होता है जो कि PC1 के साथ लगता है। ओह, कहाँ पे मैं आ गई भाई? मैं प्राइवेट सेक्टर की बंदी हूँ, आई एम नॉट फ्रॉम गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर। पहला प्रोजेक्ट है गवर्नमेंट के साथ कर रही हूँ। अर्बन यूनिट में मैंने बहुत अरसा काम किया, वर्ल्ड बैंक और एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक के साथ काम किया, GCF के साथ पिछले 6 साल से काम कर रही हूँ। पहली दफा गवर्नमेंट के साथ सोचा कि ये भी करके तजर्बा जिंदगी में देखते हैं, 40 साल उम्र में ये भी कर लेना चाहिए। सो गवर्नमेंट का प्रोजेक्ट जो है वो ज्वाइन किया। तो मतलब मेरे लिए ये बहुत बड़ा एक चैलेंज था जब मुझे ये पता चलता था कि गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर के लोग जो हैं वो PDD को PC1 समझते हैं। तो सबसे पहला चैलेंज इस गलत फहमी से गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर के लोगों को निकालना था, उनको चेहरा दिखाना था, हकीकत की तरफ ले जाना था कि PDD PC1 नहीं होता। वो PC1 जो 24 घंटे के अंदर अंदर अगले दिन अप्रूवल के लिए तैयार होता है, PDD वो नहीं होती। there is some MRV, there is some transparency mechanism, there is some adaptability, there is some instruments preparation, कोई safeguards के instrument बनाने होते हैं, कोई public consultation करनी होती हैं, कोई stakeholders engagement होता है, ये सब कुछ कराते हैं आप. उसके बाद आप establish करते हैं कि ये सारी चीजें जो की हैं आपने ठीक है और आप कोई कार्बन एमिशन रिमूव करने में कामयाब हो पाए हैं. फिर कहीं जाके कोई 1-1.5 साल की लगातार अनथक मेहनत के बाद, वो भी अगर सरकार की चीजें आपके साथ चल रही हो, तो तब जाकर कहीं आप कामयाब हो पाते हैं कि प्रोजेक्ट का पीडीडी तैयार कर सके और उसको रजिस्टर कराने में कामयाब हो सके. इस चीज पर लोगों को लाना, उनको समझाना, उनको बताना, ये सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज था. उसके बाद ये बताना कि कार्बन क्रेडिट जो है ये कोई वर्ल्ड बैंक का या एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक का लोन नहीं होता जो साइन होगा और आपको अमाउंट जो है वो फाइनेंस के थ्रू मिल जाएगा और आप जो है ना अपनी मर्जी से उसमें अपनी चीजें भी डाल डूल के उसको इस्तेमाल कर पाएंगे. ऐसा नहीं है. आपने चीजें वहीं पे इस्तेमाल करनी है जहां पे आपने दावा किया है इस्तेमाल करने का. आप ऐसा नहीं करेंगे. ये सारी चीजें गवर्नमेंट को सिखाना, उनको बताना एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज था मेरे लिए. सबसे पहले मैंने क्या किया, मैंने सबसे पहले सारे सरकारी महकमों के कमोबेश कोई 20-22 सरकारी महकमों के गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पंजाब के उनके फोकल पर्सन्स नॉमिनेट करवाए. अब फोकल पर्सन्स हमारे यहाँ कैसे नॉमिनेट होते हैं? सेक्रेटरी के साथ इसका अच्छा ताल्लुक है. अच्छा, कार्बन क्रेडिट का प्रोजेक्ट है, शायद आपको कॉप में जाने का मौका मिलेगा, घूमने फिरने का मौका मिलेगा, आपको जर्मनी बॉन में जाने का मौका मिलेगा, इसको बना दो फोकल पर्सन. ये नहीं देखना इस बंदे का ताल्लुक क्या है, इसकी कैपेसिटी कितनी है, इसकी रेडीनेस अपनी कितनी है इस प्रोजेक्ट पे काम करने की. हर पहले फेज में जब मैंने रिक्वेस्ट भेजा कि फोकल पर्सन बताएं, तो वो सारे के सारे एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी, डेप्यूटी सेक्रेटरी, 18वें ग्रेड, 19वां ग्रेड, पास का बंदा, डीएमजी का बंदा, फलाना बंदा. मैंने कहा सर आप मेरे साथ काम कैसे करेंगे? इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल. मुझे वो बंदे चाहिए जो दिन रात अनथक मेहनत करने के लिए मेरे साथ बैठे हो, जो मेरे साथ फील्ड में जाके सर खपाएं, पब्लिक कंसल्टेशनें करवाएं, वहां पे जाकर मुझे खवातीन, बच्चे, बुजुर्ग, पर्सन विद डिसेबिलिटीज तलाश करके उनके साथ कंसल्टेशन कराने में हेल्प करें. ये फोकल पर्सन मेरे काम के नहीं. फिर उसके बाद फिर मैंने क्या किया, फिर मैंने इनकी कंसल्टेशन, इनके कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग सेशंस करवाए. कोई 10-12 कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग सेशंस करवाए. सारे सरकारी महकमों को इकट्ठा किया, ऊपर से लेकर नीचे तक सारा को इकट्ठा करके उसमें से देखा. इसमें एडीपीसी की आई विल बी आल्सो थैंकफुल टू सना जुल्फिकार. अगर जानते होंगे डेफिनेटली सना को बहुत सारे लोग, उन्होंने बहुत सपोर्ट किया मुझे. एसटीपीआई के प्लेटफॉर्म से कुछ जो है वो चीज़ें उन्होंने, एडीपीसी सॉरी, एशियन डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस सेंटर, उन्होंने मुझे सपोर्ट किया. तो हम इसमें उनके साथ करके कुछ कंसल्टेशनें हम कर सके. कुछ कंसल्टेशनें जो है वो हमें ऑक्सफोर्ड पॉलिसी मैनेजमेंट और जीआईजी के तावन के साथ मैंने करवाई, अपने जाती पुराने तल्लुकात इस्तेमाल करते हुए. बड़े काम आते हैं. गवर्नमेंट में आके पता चला तल्लुकात बहुत काम आते हैं. Now come towards another session. प्लानिंग एंड डेवलपमेंट बोर्ड के साथ एक बहुत बड़ा सेशन मैंने उसमें इसमें सेक्रेटरी प्लानिंग एंड डेवलपमेंट बोर्ड जो है उन्होंने खुद इसको टेकअप किया. और इसमें कोई लाइक ये कि 45 के करीब सरकारी महकमों को बुला के उनमें से एक एक बंदे को हमने तरीका कर क्या मैंने रखा. एक मैंने चेकलिस्ट बनाई, उसमें पूछा कार्बन होता क्या है, क्रेडिट क्या होता है, मिलता कैसे है, मोनेटाइजेशन क्या होता है, कैसे करोगे. उसके बाद असेस करके मैंने खुद फोकल पर्सन्स निकाले. थोड़ा बहुत जिस बंदे को पता था उसको पिन पॉइंट किया, उसको निकाला, फोकल पर्सन्स नॉमिनेट करवाए. ये ओवरऑल तस्वीर है. उसके बाद जब मैंने सारे फोकल पर्सन्स नॉमिनेट करवा चुकी, इस वक्त अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह मेरे पास गवर्नमेंट के 32 महकमों के फोकल पर्सन्स मौजूद हैं. उनका मैंने व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप बनाया और हर वक्त उनको मैंने बताया हुआ होता है ये ऐसे है ये वैसे है, कोई नई गाइडलाइंस आ रही है मैं इनको बता रही हूँ, फिर मैं उनसे पूछती भी रहती हूँ उसमें क्या है, तुम लोगों को क्या लगता है इसमें क्या है, तुम्हारे महकमे से रिलेटेड क्या चीज़ है। लेकिन थैंक्स गॉड कि कुछ ना कुछ हो गई चीज़ें, मतलब है कि फोकल पर्सन होने का कुछ फायदा मुझे हो गया कि PC1 निकलवाना है, मीटिंग सेक्रेटरी के साथ करवानी है, कोई चीज़ें फंस गई हैं वो करवानी है तो वो कर देते हैं हेल्प आउट। सो थैंक्स गॉड ये चीज़ें पहला स्टेप मैंने सक्सेसफुली कर लिया। उसके बाद मैंने क्या किया कि उन्हीं लोगों को पकड़ के 1-to-1 उनके साथ मीटिंग्स की, हर एक बंदे के दफ्तर में जाके या उसको अपने दफ्तर में बुला के या उसकी साइट पे जाके मीटिंग्स की, फिर वहां से प्रोजेक्ट्स निकलना शुरू हुए। सबसे पहला प्रोजेक्ट निकला जी, ADB फंडेड है, लोकल गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट का प्रोजेक्ट, इंटीग्रेटेड सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम फॉर बहावलपुर। बहावलपुर की ये लैंडफिल साइट बना रहे थे, उसमें जो है ये सबसे पहला प्रोजेक्ट मुझे आइडेंटिफाई करने में कामयाबी हुई। अब सबसे बड़ा जो चैलेंज था वो ये था कि जो PC1 हैं, पिछला जो ADP था पिछले साल का वो बन चुका था और आपके PC1 अलाइंड नहीं थे कार्बन प्रोजेक्ट्स के साथ, तो फिर इनके एक एक बंदे के साथ बैठ के इनको हमने PC1 इनके SMDP पे जाके खोलते थे, वहां से PC1 हम निकालते थे और फिर इनको कहते थे कि इसमें ये 2-2 3-3 पैराग्राफ्स डालो, ये एडिशनैलिटी के पैसे डालो, ये आपने जो है ना इस प्रोजेक्ट को जो रजिस्टर करवाना है मार्केट में उसके जो फी है रजिस्ट्रेशन की उसके पैसे डालो, VV20 को एंगेज करने के पैसे डालो, ये सारी चीजें एक एक महकमे के साथ बैठ के उनके PC1 में डलवाई। इस तरीके से आप देखिए कि हमने काम किया। अब आप ये देख सकते हैं फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट का एक बहुत अहम प्रोजेक्ट हमने आइडेंटिफाई किया और ये सिर्फ हमने आइडेंटिफाई करके इसको PC1 में शामिल करके हमने इसकी पब्लिक कंसल्टेशनें भी की। एक एक फॉरेस्ट साइट पे हम लोग गए, कमालिया, बखर, लैया, कहाँ कहाँ पे हम लोग गए और ये सारी पब्लिक कंसल्टेशनें की। वेमेन एंगेजमेंट इसमें हमने किया, पीपल विद डिफरेंट एबिलिटीज को एंगेज किया, इसमें तमाम जो सेफ गार्ड्स की रिक्वायरमेंट थी उनको हमने फुलफिल किया। देन एनर्जी डिपार्टमेंट के कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स जो हैं वो हमारे पास आए, लाइक पब्लिक सेक्टर बिल्डिंग्स का KFW का एक प्रोजेक्ट था वो निकला, CM पंजाब फ्री सोलर बायोगैस प्लांट जो है गुज्जर कॉलोनी का, SN was here, he is looking into this project। तो ये प्रोजेक्ट जो है ये सारे हमने निकाले, एनर्जी सेक्टर के, वाटर एंड सैनिटेशन वासा के प्रोजेक्ट्स निकाले। हमने सिर्फ ये नहीं किया कि दफ्तर में बैठ के मीटिंग्स किए, हमने साइटों पे जाके खुद विजिट किए, पब्लिक कंसल्टेशनें की, ट्रांसपेरेंसी और अकाउंटेबिलिटी को मैक्सिमम इंश्योर कराते हुए उन प्रोजेक्ट्स को आइडेंटिफाई किया कि प्रोजेक्ट्स की रेडीनेस खुद कितनी है, महकमे की अपनी रेडीनेस कितनी है। ट्रांसपोर्ट डिपार्टमेंट के अभी EVs की हम बात कर रहे थे, इलेक्ट्रिक बसें जो हैं, इलेक्ट्रिक रिक्शास जो हैं और इलेक्ट्रिक जो टैक्सीज हैं उस पे काम कर रहा है वेस्ट ट्रांसपोर्ट डिपार्टमेंट गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पंजाब का, तो उनके साथ मिलके हमने सारे EVs के प्रोजेक्ट्स जो हैं वो निकाले। एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर के प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, इसमें हमारे पास माइंस एंड मिनरल डिपार्टमेंट के प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, वी हैव पंजाब साफ पानी अथॉरिटी के प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, इसमें हमारे पास साफ पानी अथॉरिटी का प्रोजेक्ट एक ऑलरेडी रजिस्टर्ड भी हो चुका है। इसी तरह से हमें फिर पंजाब कैटल मार्केट वालों ने रिसेंटली, अब ये सिचुएशन हो चुकी है कि गवर्नमेंट के हर महकमे को पता चल चुका है कि चीजें कहाँ पे है, अब खुद उनके CEOs जो हैं मुख्तलिफ कंपनीज के या सेक्रेटरीज हैं, एडिशनल सेक्रेटरीज हैं, वो खुद हमें अप्रोच कर रहे होते हैं कि हमें लगता है हमारा ये प्रोजेक्ट कार्बन मार्केट का बन सकता है, आप इसका पोटेंशियल देख के बताएं कि किस तरीके से हम लेकर के चलें। ये सब करने के बाद हमने 15 प्रोजेक्ट्स इस वक्त तक अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह वी हैव आइडेंटिफाइड, और ये जो 15 प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं इनमें से कोई 5 से 6 प्रोजेक्ट्स ऐसे हैं जो बहुत एडवांस स्टेज पर जिनकी हम टिम्स और PDD डेवलपमेंट पे काम कर चुके हैं। उसके बाद क्या हुआ कि फेडरल गवर्नमेंट की दिसंबर 2024 में जब हम पैदा हुए, ग्रीन कैडेट पैदा हुआ, मतलब मेरा प्रोग्राम, उस वक्त ही गाइडलाइंस भी आ गई फेडरल गवर्नमेंट की। अब वो गाइडलाइंस को इंटीग्रेट करना अपने इस सारे मंसूबे के साथ, दैट वाज एन अदर चैलेंज। वही गाइडलाइंस जो सुबह से तज़किरा जहां पे हम कर रहे हैं जिनका, अब इस गाइडलाइंस को प्रोविंस के साथ कैसे इंटीग्रेट किया जाए, तो हमारे पास पंजाब में के तरीकाकार थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट था। प्लानिंग एंड डेवलपमेंट बोर्ड जो है उसमें आपका हर वो प्रोजेक्ट जाता है अगर आप जो है उसमें कोई लाइक ये कि आप एंगेज कर रहे हैं, कोई भी फॉरेन फंडिंग उसमें इन्वॉल्व है या आपकी उसमें कोई इन्वेस्टर इन्वॉल्व है, तो आपको PFAC और प्री फीफैक मीटिंग्स करवा के उसके बाद आपने उसको कैबिनेट से अप्रूव करवाना है और फिर थ्रू PND आपने MOCC में भिजवाना है। अब इस सारे प्रोसेस को स्ट्रीमलाइन करना एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज था। इसके लिए फिर हमने प्रोविंस की अपनी गाइडलाइंस अक्टूबर में बनाई है। पंजाब की गाइडलाइंस फॉर कार्बन मार्केट बन चुकी हैं, इसका पहला ड्राफ्ट रेडी हो चुका है और इसकी कंसल्टेटिव सेशन भी हो चुका है. These guidelines are aligned with the federal government guidelines. These are aligned with the Punjab other setup of legal framework, Pakistan NDC's theory. And then there are the purpose, scope, guiding principle की सारी अंग्रेजी होती है, बस ये सारी एक जैसी चीजें होती हैं. This is the overall project cycle. Financial flow, चेकलिस्टें हमने इसमें सारी डाली. पंजाब ने क्या करना है, डिपार्टमेंट ने खुद क्या करना है, पीएनडी ने क्या करना है, हमारे डिपार्टमेंट ने इन्वायरमेंट प्रोटेक्शन एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज डिपार्टमेंट ने क्या करना है, ये सारी चीजें किस किस का क्या रोल है, कौन सी चेकलिस्ट कहाँ पे है. और आई वुड आल्सो लाइक टू टेल यू ओवर दिस ओवर हेयर कि अभी रिसेंटली फेडरल गवर्नमेंट ने हमसे रिक्वेस्ट मांगी थी, तमाम सूबों से मांगी थी कि जी एक प्रोविंशियल अथॉरिटी बनाई जाए जो कि लेटर ऑफ इंडोर्समेंट इशू करेगी. तो इसी प्रोग्राम की वजह से जो इन्वायरमेंट प्रोटेक्शन एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज डिपार्टमेंट है उसको एलओई देने का जो है वो आजाज भी मिल चुका है और अभी तक हमारे पास कोई 10-12 प्रोजेक्ट्स आ चुके हैं एलओई लेने के लिए भी. सो इसका पहला हमने कंसल्टेटिव सेशन जो है ये 3 अक्टूबर को अभी करवाया है. तो ये गाइडलाइंस इंशाल्लाह बाय द एंड ऑफ दिसंबर ये फुली लॉन्च जो है हम पंजाब की गाइडलाइंस जो है ये लॉन्च हम कर चुके होंगे इंशाल्लाह. सो इट इज ऑल अबाउट मी. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you, Ms. Rizwana. Now I would request Mr. Tala Hussain Faisal, Special Secretary, Climate Change, Forest, Environment and Wildlife Department.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I would not take much time as you people are already in low energy mode, I know. But I would rather thankful to team TI and the people over here for publishing such a comprehensive report dealing with almost all factors which affect climate and are the way forward toward carbon credit. That is impressive report, and I am honored to be part of this team here, listening you people, the ideas and the things you presented, and all those information which has been shared here would be a way forward for all provinces and Pakistan toward a better future. As we know that KP is the largest province in terms of forest habitat. We have taken very much initiatives toward carbon credit, but we have meaning only some people who know what is carbon credit, how it flourish, what is the benefit. Those people which are actual stakeholder, which are working at operational level, they don't know what is carbon credit, how to get benefit of it, and what is the way forward, or what is the use of planting a tree or moving from fossil to solar energy. The need is to disseminate information, awareness to those people who don't know, because without their involvement, we can't do any appreciable for this carbon credit or the environmental protection basically. So we have done many projects in past like KP RED, Environmental Social Management Framework, benefit sharing mechanism, trophy hunting in which we involve community. 80% one of the colleagues here shared that community involvement is there, trophy hunting, where he was very right that 80% of the benefit goes to the local community. Same in the forest harvesting, if it is non-protected or the type of community forest, then after harvesting 80% or in some cases 100% goes to community. Now in terms of carbon credit, we have identified many areas in Malakand, Hazara. There are figures, but I would not quote them because neither you will remember them or nor it's the use here to just decide them. But there are figures that in DG Khan we have potential of 286 to 291 million over US dollar benefit would be there for carbon credit if we go through these project for forest improvement, IFM. We have also developed there some PPP node because without involving private partners, government alone can't do very much. So there are certain projects of 3.2 to 6 million in which community and private partners would be involved for potential marketing of carbon. Without, that to sustain a market, first of all, we have to disseminate information. We see ads in TV, we see, for example, if we take some cloth or some tea or some milk, etc., we numerously day and night see the ads on TV. Same, we have to have some sort of information awareness in the stakeholders so that they know what is carbon credit, what is their use, and what benefits could be harvested. We have draft RFP. We have digital MRV. These are the projects which we have started at provincial level. As the projects or the concept of carbon credit is new, provinces are nascent in developing their ideas. Soon you would see that there would be change and there would be much development in KP in terms of carbon credit. I would not mention those problems which provinces face because already we have discussed much that there is capacity issues, there are funding issues, there are awareness issues. The similar sort of problems are there in KP. So need is to aware people as well as the leaders or the managers to move for a better future, for carbon credit in terms of environment, or merely the laws or legal framework is not sufficient. Its implementation and its monitoring is very much important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. As we move toward the conclusion of today's program, it is important that we leave with clarity, direction, and momentum for the road ahead. To help us reflect on today's key messages and future actions, I now invite Mr. Zulfikar Yunus, Senior Advisor Climate Finance, Pakistan, CVF V20 Secretariat, for the closing remarks. Please welcome him with a warm round of applause.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. सबसे पहले let me thank Transparency International, especially Kashif Sheikh Sahab, for organizing this very useful and informative session on preparedness of the government of Pakistan on carbon markets. In 2024, COP29 Baku, we launched the carbon market policy. At that time, I was the ETC secretary in the Ministry of Climate Change. And on our pavilion, I saw Kashif Sheikh Saab was, very attentively listening to the session on the carbon market. And he's asking questions. I also had a meeting with him on those days. And I didn't know that it will actually culminate into a very useful report, which we saw today. So let me just thank him for helping government of Pakistan for coming up with a very analytical and a useful report. As you know, carbon market is the next big thing which is happening to this globe. Some estimates say that it would be over $1 trillion US market, US dollar market by 2040. And it is very important that Pakistan should take maximum possible share from this market, because we, being the one of the most climate vulnerable countries, have so much of scope to exploit this carbon market effectively. And as you know, basically, other countries like Bhutan. So, as a climate vulnerable forum, I'm a senior advisor on climate finance to them, and we are looking at different countries. And one of the countries is Bhutan. So we are just studying their carbon market, and it's a very tiny country as compared to Pakistan, but they have almost 30 to 40 carbon market companies working there in Bhutan. And there's so much enthusiasm and kind of vigor in the Bhutani public, that they are all for carbon market. While I think Pakistan much bigger, so has much greater opportunity to exploit from the carbon market. And it was really heartening to see that the provinces in Pakistan, they are very actively, of course, working towards that end, because it's ultimately, the battle will be fought in the provinces, because provinces have the credit, carbon credit sources. So I think if the provinces are aware, if provinces are proactive, we will be able to exploit the maximum benefit from the carbon credit market. What I see a little challenge is that within the provinces, some provinces have done so much homework, while the other remains a little, there's a need to help them. So I think it would be important that those provinces are also being, beefed up in terms of capacity, in terms of knowledge about the carbon market. So that is very important. Besides that, I think the report highlights few very important things, like the key pillars that report mentions about inclusivity, transparency, and passing off of benefits and integrity of the credit. So I think these are actually also the core principles of the carbon policy that government of Pakistan has unveiled in last year. But I think what need to be done, and has been also pointed out in the report, is that there's a dire need to enhance the capacity at the federal level as well as at the provinces, because provinces again are the key. Some provinces have taken lead, but we need that we have an equal growth of carbon credit market in each province. So when we talk about carbon credit, so what I feel, based on my experience in carbon market, that we should also focus on the high value carbon credits. Like, for instance, if you talk about the carbon credit for renewable energy, it is somewhere from $1 to $5. At the moment, there's a recession in the market, but still, that is the price normally it fetches in the carbon market. But if you go to some other commodities like biochar, which has a longer period, and its credit is somewhere $120 one credit to $300 a credit. So there's a need to focus on those credits, I think, in Pakistan as well. At the moment, there is a very little focus on biochar or similar. There are so many other similar elements which could be, capitalized if we want to basically have maximum credit from the carbon market. Essentially, today's discussion, the panel discussion, and in the morning talk, I saw that there is a preparedness and there is a kind of awareness in the government sector, both federal level as well as in the provinces. And the need is actually to mobilize our private sector, because that is, as they say, the engine of growth is the private sector. So that is where we would have the maximum benefit. And for that, government of Pakistan has recently, as you might be knowing, published the green taxonomy. So what this taxonomy did, it actually classified all the green investments. So if a commercial banks want to lend money to a climate project, so it now has a very very easy for the bank to distinguish which one is the green investment or which is not. Now we are talking to State Bank that maybe we should move into the direction whereby we ask commercial banks to give, State Bank gives commercial banks green lending targets, so that we have focused investments on green projects, and also this will definitely come to the carbon credit projects mostly. Similarly, you might be knowing that SCCP has updated their green sustainability guidelines, and we are talking to SCCP to actually come up with some sustainability targets. Let's say by 2040, how much emission reduction each corporate company or listed company at the stock market, let's say we can take top 100 companies, how much they will reduce emissions, so that once we have, as you might be knowing, that these big multinational companies, Fortune 500 companies, all of them, they have their sustainability targets by 2040, 2050, so different ranges of targets. And because of their targets, because of their regulators, they have committed to the regulators these targets. Now they are looking for carbon credits from other countries, so they are ready to invest. For instance, Saudi Aramco, they intend to buy 100 million of carbon credits in next 3 years. Similarly, other Fortune 500 countries, they will be buying credit from different countries. Zainab mentioned about Thailand, so there's some credits has been bought in Thailand. So similarly, there are so many other entities, they are looking for credits. Shell, I met the sustainability director of Shell International. They are looking for around $5 million worth credit. They are looking for from Pakistan, India, and South Asia region. Similarly, other companies are so the demand is there. What we need is we need to prepare ourselves for the demand. In 2024, when we were at COP, we met with major carbon credit investors or buyer countries, and we are working with them for A64 or A6.2 carbon credit mechanisms, and they are willing to invest in Pakistan. So I think that the only need is that we have to quickly complete, as in the morning and also during the panel discussion that we witnessed, it was also mentioned that we need to complete our ecosystem, essentially registry, essentially MRV system. And then there is a very important entity, which is Carbon Market Secretariat, which should be staffed with a professional carbon removal, carbon reduction specialists, and also MRV and also registry specialists. So those should be manning the Carbon Market Secretariat. And while Government of Pakistan, Ministry of Climate Change should continue to be the nationally designated entity for all the carbon market purposes. And I think in the session also somebody mentioned that the Carbon Market Working Group is also there. Then we have Climate Change Authority. We also have Climate Change Council. So we have all these mechanisms in place. The only thing is we need to focus more on their working and maybe go forward with a very positive mindset. But at the same time, I think, as I just mentioned, that for future, I think we need similar kind of forums or discussions more and more, because this is something, a new topic in Pakistan, at least as far as I met so many people. Most of them, they are learning by these kind of sessions. So I think we and this is because things are new. Nobody knows exactly what is the final word in that, but we continue to interact with each other, share ideas, and then firm up our views. So that will continue for some time till the markets are mature, till we have significant knowledge about carbon markets. But all in all, I think let me conclude with once again thanking Kashif Saab and his team for organizing this session, and the need to have more of such sessions. So I think with this, I would like to thank once again for inviting me as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the formal conclusion of today's dissemination workshop. On behalf of the Transparency International Pakistan, I sincerely thank to all our speakers, panelists, and participants for making this session meaningful and impactful. You are now invited for lunch at the backside of the hall. Thank you for your time, your engagement, and your contribution. Have a wonderful day ahead.